Welcome to My Line of Work. Here we dive deep into the world of work, what people do, why they do it, and how they got there. From dream jobs to unexpected paths, every story matters and every career has a story worth sharing. Today, our special guest is Melissa Bogh. Thank you so much for being here. I'm excited about this one.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
So go ahead and tell everybody what you do.
I am currently a middle school teacher. I teach sixth grade English at a middle school here in San Antonio. And I've been teaching in this district for about 10 years now.
Okay.
But I've actually started teaching back in the 90s. So
cool. Very cool. And so how did you get into teaching? How was that?
I started just by going to college and getting my degree in elementary education.
Oh, okay.
So back in the 90s.
Yeah.
Before the internet.
Yeah. I tell my kids, I'm older than Google.
Right? Yeah. And I don't come from a family of teachers. However, I found out as an adult that my grandma was a teacher.
Oh,
but I didn't know that when I was growing up. I didn't really get that connection.
Okay.
So it wasn't like it was in my family and I really wanted to do it. It was just a career that I was drawn to because I like teaching just in general.
Yeah.
And I considered being a lawyer. I considered being a marine biologist. But both of those just didn't quite fit with what my life at the time was pointing me towards. So.
Yeah. Very cool. So right out of high school,
I jumped right into it.
Very cool. And okay. And then after, where did you study? Where did you go to school?
I went to BYU in Provo, Utah.
Okay.
Brigham Young University. So, and I started there, in the early 90s, and I graduated in 97. So my first year teaching was actually the 96-97 school year.
Okay.
And I did, instead of doing student teaching, they had a program set up where I could have my own classroom and have a mentor teacher in my classroom once a week to kind of help me and guide me and help me with my lessons and critique my teaching all the week.
And you were getting paid like a teacher?
Okay, so this is I love telling this part because I made $10,000 my first year of teaching.
You're making the big bucks.
I was making the big bucks because I got half salary. So yeah, those were some meager days.
So starting back then was
$20,000. Yeah.
Wow.
So I have lots of thoughts on teacher salary because I have literally gone from the very lowest.
Yeah.
And I have seen the very highest now, but I just haven't seen it in my paycheck yet.
Interesting. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So, and this was considered your senior year of college?
It was, yeah.
Okay.
So,
like your last semester?
It was the full school year. So I finished classes in the spring of 96.
Okay.
And then I started teaching the fall of 96.
Okay.
And graduated in December of 97.
Oh, wow. So, that's cool.
So it was kind of cool because my first year I was still technically in school, but I was getting paid. I was a employee of the district.
That's
I can count that as credit.
Yeah, because my student teaching was a semester, but I wasn't getting paid.
No.
It's like I lived at home.
It was a really unique program.
Cool.
I don't know if I doubt I'm sure they do some kind of form.
You think they'll bring that back with the teacher shortages? They're like,
it's possible.
Bring them in.
It's possible.
Yeah.
And I think it worked well for me because I'm very self-directed and I took very naturally to teaching.
Yeah.
And the way that the program was set up is that I'd already had some student teaching experiences.
Oh, okay.
So I had already done some student teaching before that. So I had been in the classroom. They see what I was like. I had done the lesson plans. I had done all of the process part. So
that's cool.
By the time I was in the classroom, I felt ready and prepared.
Yeah.
So
man, that's super cool.
Yeah.
And what? So how did you? Oh, that was through the university. You found that program. Okay. Yeah. And then what was the first level that you taught? Like what grade?
So my first year, I was teaching fourth grade.
Okay.
Because I was elementary certified.
Yeah.
And then I moved to California and I taught third and fourth grade for a couple of years in San Bernardino.
Okay. And your degree was EC through?
It was, Oh
Was it
man, what
4
was
or
my original
6?
degree?
Yeah.
It was, oh man, I think it was EC through, no, it wasn't EC because that was a separate program. Early childhood
Oh,
was a separate
really?
program
Oh,
in
okay.
Utah.
Okay.
So I was credentialed K through 6
Oh, K through 6.
general.
Okay.
And then I moved to California and got the California credential that was also K through 6.
Okay.
So,
K through 6. Very cool.
yeah.
And did you have a favorite grade back then?
5th grade,
Oh, you
for
like 5th
sure.
grade?
Yeah.
Really?
And I did some student teaching in 6th grade. I really liked that as
Yeah.
well. I liked the older kids.
Oh,
So
okay.
I generally gravitated towards the
Yeah,
older
yeah.
kids. In fact, my
Okay.
very first student teaching experience was in 1st grade.
Mm-hmm.
My first observation, it was a
Yeah.
principal that was observing me.
Yeah, yeah.
And the very first thing out of his mouth was, "Have you ever thought about teaching older kids?" And I was like, "What? I
You
love the
took
little
offense.
kids."
Yeah.
I thought for sure going into it, I'd be like kinder, 1st grade.
Yeah.
And that was the very first thing out of his mouth. And so it made me completely rethink, oh,
That's hilarious.
maybe I'm not as good at little kids as I thought.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So,
I have a similar story, but the opposite. I taught 4th grade, and one year this new principal comes in,
yeah.
and she's like, "Hey, I'm going to move you to kinder," and I'm like, "What?" I
That's
had
my
never
first
done
nightmare.
kinder. I was like, "No." I ended up loving kinder. I loved it. If I ever go back, it's going to
gonna
be
be
for
kinder.
kinder.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't do
Yeah, I
anything
think
else.
you're either little kids or bigger kids.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I
You
don't
kind
know
of
if
find
there's
a
like-
yeah. Yeah, because I have a friend that does middle school, and I'm like, I don't know how y'all teach middle
Yeah.
school.
And I
I
don't-
could not do middle
And
school.
honestly, at this point in my career, my worst nightmare is the principal doing that exact
Yeah,
same
yeah.
thing, coming in and saying, "Oh, next you're going to be in kindergarten." I'll be like,
Yeah, I'm out.
"I'm out. I can't do this."
Yeah. Oh man, that's awesome. So this isn't. Is this something you always wanted to do? Not really, right?
You know what? It's something that I had thought about, but I love learning in general. Like I
Okay.
love everything. So
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
really hard for me to narrow it down what I actually wanted to do. And
Yeah.
elementary education at the time was a good fit because
Yeah.
I literally couldn't decide. So
Okay.
all of my classes were over everything. Like I took a bird class and I took,
Really?
a rock class and I took
Yeah.
a history class. I did all of the basics
Yeah.
so that I could teach the
Okay.
elementary level. So
Yeah.
it was a good
Very
fit for the
cool.
time.
Yeah. Okay. So those that don't know about teaching, can you kind of walk through a typical day?
Yes. A typical day for me is I just teach now. I was in the past, I've done department head, I've done team lead, I've done different leadership type roles. I've also taught different subjects. So right
and are you
now,
compensated for those roles?
It depends.
Okay. Go ahead. You can talk about
It
that.
depends.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's part of why I just went back to teaching now. Because I just want to be paid just to teach.
Yeah.
So typically today I teach 6th grade English. And so I usually get to school about an hour before the kids come. We have a custodian shortage, which I know is very common nationwide, not just here.
Yeah.
And so I end up cleaning desks, I sweep floors, I mop, I clean boards. I do all of the actual custodial stuff.
Okay.
Because that just doesn't get done very often in my classroom.
Okay.
So they do, every day it's the halls and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But in my classroom, there is, you've got to keep it
A
clean
need
as a
for
teacher.
that, yeah.
Kind of feels very 1800s, one room schoolhouse kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I get the classroom ready to go. Usually copies and stuff are made during the day previous. So usually my materials are ready to go.
Yeah.
But my day consists of, welcoming kids, being in the hallway, making sure that they're safe, starting a class. You usually in a typical lesson, you have multiple parts to the lesson itself. So I'll be teaching for a little bit, but then the kids do a lot of independent work and I work with small groups or I work with one-on-one students throughout the day. There is a lot of paperwork kind of scattered throughout the day because of, I teach in a general education classroom. So I have special education students as well as co-teachers that come in and help those students.
Yeah.
So there's additional paperwork that goes along with that as well.
Okay.
So it's very fast paced. You have to think on your feet. You have to be aware of 30 other bodies at a time and where they're at and what they need. So it's a lot of just thinking on your feet. But really the bottom line is the relationships with the kids. And that's why I show up every day.
Yeah.
Because they make life interesting.
Yeah. Oh, they do. And then you have how many classes per day? Because you're in middle school.
Yes, I'm in middle school. So I have 7 classes per day. 6 are English classes.
Okay.
So I've got 3 on-level classes and 3 honors classes.
Okay.
And then I have 1 class at the very end of the day that is, they call it AIM, but it's like a study hall type situation.
Okay.
And we also encourage reading because there used to be a 90-minute block for English language arts and reading, but they got away with that. So now it's just down to one class period. Okay. So we are trying to encourage the kids to read more. So we give them the opportunity during their AIM class because all 6th graders are required to take it. So sneak that little little bit of extra reading time.
And how long are those periods?
They're about 45 minutes.
Oh, okay. Apiece. Do you feel, is that a good amount of time? Is it too short, too long?
So during COVID, we had 70-minute periods because we would had 4 periods a day and then we would flip flop. We had
like a block schedule,
like an AB schedule. And so I've taught a little bit longer classes of when we have early release. They're 30 minutes. So I really like the 45 minutes is a good amount of time. Okay. It gives enough time for instruction. It gives enough time for practice. It gives enough time for the kids to really settle into the concept that they're learning for the day. 30 minutes you can do, and it's nice to have those days every once in a while just to kind of move things along. Yeah. But I think over an extended time, 45 minutes is about right.
Okay. And then in middle school, at what time are the students getting there?
So our school starts at 8:25.
Okay.
And they release at 3:40.
Okay. So, and then what is your schedule? Are you expected to be there early and stay later?
We need to be there at 7. Excuse me. Our contract time starts at 7:45.
Okay.
And we're there till 4:15.
So about 30 minutes on each side. Okay. And then inside of your school day, you have your 7 periods. Do you have what does lunch look like? And then do you have what is it called? A planning period. There you go.
I do. Yeah. Okay. So I do have a planning period and that takes 1 regular class period.
So 45 minutes.
So 45 minutes, that's what you get. Yeah. And then, and then we do have a 30-minute lunch, which is the one, like every middle school teacher will tell you, that's the worst thing about it is because it is very quick. Yeah. When you go to high school, they do have a full class period for lunch, so it's a little nicer. Yeah, you can breathe a little bit more. Yeah.
Well, coming from elementary, my lunch was like 20 minutes because you have to take the kids.
Oh, that's
and you have to pick them up. You don't have that, right? You don't have to. No. You're just
sometimes you stand in the hallways to make sure, especially in 6th grade, they like to run everywhere. Oh, okay. So like reminding them to slow down and like safety first.
Yeah. I in my middle school, the principal would be in the hallway. I don't know if it was just during our lunch. He would literally be in the hallway, Mr. Washington, and he'd like, if you're running, he'd grab you, he'd put you on the wall.
On the wall.
And then he'd grab you, and then so you know, and then once everyone's done, he's like, all right, guys, walk. And then you'd have to walk in a line.
Yep. Yeah, sometimes we'll make them practice. Okay, try that again. Yeah, come back to the classroom. Now on to lunch.
So where do you eat your lunch?
Usually in the faculty lounge. There's a group of us that eat together.
Oh, okay.
During COVID, and I've always done that, but during COVID, everybody was eating in their classrooms, and you just really miss that camaraderie and that collegiality and just adult time.
Yes.
Adult conversations.
Yeah.
So I make it a point to eat in the faculty lounge.
Okay. And then do you find that the planning period is enough to plan?
It's never enough. Okay. It's just never enough. And I think the increasing demands on teachers without the either compensation or time to prepare for those things is really, it's really affecting people today in the profession. So
do you think that plays a role in the teacher shortage.
Oh, for
That
sure.
yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah,
it's just the increasing demands on teachers, and
yeah,
there's a million different things that we're expected to do and
mhm,
to be, and
yeah,
it's not really realistic or
mm,
feasible,
yeah,
and the decisions are being made like way high up
yeah,
above,
yeah.
like it's not
Outside of the
even, yeah,
yeah,
it's not even in
unfortunately,
anyone's control at this
yeah,
point. So
yeah. And you would think like those people should have teaching experience.
you would
You would
think,
think.
or at least visit schools
Yeah,
on
yeah,
a regular basis,
yeah.
because we do have, administrators that come in and visit schools, but they're in and out
Mm.
so quickly that they don't
Yeah, they
actually
just see
spend
a
any amount of
small.
time within the classroom,
Yeah, yeah.
because from the hallway the classroom is a very different experience than
Hmm.
within the classroom day in and day out,
Yeah,
and the struggles and the demands that happen
yeah.
because of that.
Or
So
even getting like feedback from you guys
okay,
to
so
say,
and
is that
and I
ever done?
have it is, and my concern is that the feedback is so data focused that it
Hmm.
becomes sanitary and not useful,
Okay.
because they ask questions and they basically construct the questions of the answers they want to hear, or the
Okay.
answers that they
Yeah, yeah,
can
yeah.
manage without
Yeah.
actually addressing what the actual problem are. So
Yeah.
they're looking from the outside in and thinking, okay, we should ask these questions,
Okay.
instead of
And
asking from the inside out,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
going, what questions do we need to
Yeah.
even
What do we
address?
not know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
What are our blind
understand
spots?
exactly. And I
Yeah.
understand from an administrative point of view, it looks very,
Hmm.
very different from the classroom point of
Yeah.
view.
Yeah.
But it would be nice to have that from the classroom point of view
Yeah.
input,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
real and authentic instead of
Yeah. Yeah. Like,
constructed.
see, and treating it like a business, like these are our customers,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And then the closest person to our customers are the teachers,
The
and
teachers.
everything's happening in the classroom.
Right.
Because, yeah, we have, even though there's a lot of, um, expectations,
Hmm.
there's also a lot of autonomy.
Yes.
And so we've got to find, like, okay, the teachers, the things that are going well, what's happening in that classroom, right? And
Exactly.
studying
Yeah.
that and taking that feedback.
Yeah.
And then when whatever's going wrong, it's like, okay, also what's happening in that
In the
classroom.
classroom, and
Yeah.
what are the other factors that are
Yeah.
affecting
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
where's the breakdown? Because a lot of
Yes.
times it's very, oh, it's this one reason,
Hmm.
but because we're dealing with humans,
Yeah.
it's not. It's
Yeah.
it's complex,
Yeah.
and there's multiple factors that go
Yeah.
into, the issues and the problems that teachers face today.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the human side of a student, right?
Hmm.
And we want there, there's a certain result that we want, right,
Right.
from the outside.
Yeah.
But, the home life
Hmm.
and,
Yeah.
sleep and their eating
Yes.
habits, and like it's
Yes.
just very, very, it can get
It is. Yeah.
very,
We're humans.
yeah.
We're
Yeah.
humans.
No, well, it's good that, you understand that. It's good for the
Yes.
kids that you understand that, right? Because I think as a profession, teaching has to be, like you said earlier, right? Like the relationship.
It
It's got to
is.
be the most important.
Mhm.
Um, like my daughter, she's not good at math, right? So I'm like, I hope her math teacher understands that.
Right.
Like her best may be a 75,
Yeah.
right? And we've learned to be okay with that. Like
Right.
we're like, we're not like great, um we're not like you have to get all A's, right?
Mhm.
But we're also not like, oh, it doesn't matter if you don't pass, right? Like
Right.
we try to balance,
There's a
like,
balance.
we know that where so like my son and my youngest daughter are really good at math. So if they get low in math, we're like, hey, like,
What's going on?
why do you not have,
Right.
a better grade?
Yeah.
But my daughter, who has always struggled. Oh, this brings up a thing. I told my wife this one time. I don't know, because you've taught kind of, elementary, now you're in middle school.
Mhm.
My daughter, my oldest, who's not very good at math, kinder, first, second, she would get straight A's.
Okay.
Okay. While I'm working with her at home, and I see that she's struggling, kinder,
Yeah.
struggling in math, struggling in math. And I'm like, how does she have an A in math? I'm like, she's struggling through it. So then I tell my wife, I was like, okay, just a heads up. once she hits third, fourth, fifth, like her grades are gonna, her math grade especially, because now there's the state assessment, and if she has all straight A's, but then she's failing the state assessment, like there's something's off. And then that happened, right? Third grade, it's like a B. Fifth grade now is like,
right.
Then she got to middle school, and now that's where we started really seeing the C's, and I'm like, this to me is more realistic. I don't know if you can speak to that.
One thing that I've realized as a teacher, and it's taken me kind of a lot of years to figure this out, grades are not a reflection of learning.
Okay.
And there are other districts in the United States that are trying to make grades more reflective of learning.
Okay.
And when I taught in California, it was one of those times where they were trying to reconcile those two things.
Yeah.
And so it becomes, so in some districts, it looks like, have they mastered this standard, this learning standard? Mm-hmm. And those are closer to actual learning than I feel like grades are.
Okay.
Because grades can be any number of things.
Yeah.
They can represent, they can represent actual learning. They can represent completion. They can represent attitude, effort.
Yeah.
So I think as a parent, from a parent standpoint, I've learned to understand that grades are not necessarily a reflection of what the student actually knows, especially if you're still in that mindset of ABC or, 90s, 80s, 70s. And when you really have to understand what is being presented to you as far as standardized tests, as far as how that dovetails with your actual child's day-to-day grades.
Okay.
I don't think that there's a perfect system out there.
Yeah.
I think that our system now is just what it is. Like it's just, it's broken, but it's not perfect, but it is something. Like you have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's a baseline for a conversation with your child's teacher.
Yeah.
So I really stress that with parents that grades aren't necessarily a reflection of learning per se, because there's so many other factors that go into those grades.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. Because I tell my kids, I tell them the same thing. I focus more on the effort part. I tell them about grades. I say, your grades really aren't a reflection of your IQ or how smart you are. I think it's effort, right? Like if you try hard, you can do well and learn these things.
Right.
And then in a year, you may forget a lot of this stuff. So I was helping my son in math, and I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot how to do this. And he's like, you don't know how to do this? And I'm like, it's been like 30 years since I've done this.
Changed.
Yeah. I'm like, I haven't done this in like 30 years. I'm like, you're 12. I'm 40.
Right.
I was like, I took this maybe in 5th grade. So yeah, like I tell them that, right? Like it's, if you bring home, passing grades, it shows me that you're trying.
Yes.
Now, if you're failing, that's a different conversation.
Right.
If you're doing well, we also reward that. We started this thing. I don't know. Tell me what you think, because you're a teacher and a parent. Well, this is why we started it. One, we started it so that they can take school seriously and have that, put in that effort. Two, kind of as a preparation for earning scholarships, because academic scholarships are more available than any other scholarship.
Correct.
So we did, if you guys get straight A's, in that 9 weeks, we'll take you wherever you want. If you want to go bowling, if you want to go to the movie, we'll pull you out of school one day and we'll go do something.
Go do something fun.
If you get A's and B's, we'll take you out of school and we'll just take you. You can pick a restaurant. We'll go eat. If you get a C, you just don't get anything. Like you don't get punished, but you just don't get anything.
Right.
And then if you fail, that's when we start taking away phones and screens.
Yeah.
And, so that's the system we've developed. What do you think about that?
I'm a teacher. I have no comment. But
or as a parent, as a friend.
As a parent and as a friend, I think it depends on the kid and what motivates the kid.
Yeah.
And I think that you as the parent know your kids the best.
Yeah.
I'm always a huge fan of natural consequences.
Yes.
So if your child is not doing well in school because they're spending too much time on their phone,
Yeah.
then the natural consequence is let's limit the
Yeah,
phone.
yeah, yeah.
Or if your child is not doing well in school because they're struggling because they really don't understand what's going on,
Yeah.
then how can we help them
Yeah, yeah.
find, if we need to go to University of YouTube, or if we
Yeah,
need to
yeah.
like find another friend that has done
Yeah.
this before, or a peer that's done this before. So
Yeah.
I really, I love parents that
Yeah.
are actively involved in their child's education and are trying to help their kids be successful
Yeah.
in that arena. I think that that's fantastic.
Yeah. And I like that you said the word consequence in that context. Because a
Yes.
lot of the times my kids hear negative. When they hear the word consequence,
Right.
they think it's a negative
Negative
thing.
thing.
But I like how you said if they're struggling and it's really not,
Yeah.
like I'm lazy or I'm not
Right.
focused or I'm struggling. Okay,
Yeah.
well, the consequence is how can I support that?
How can I support
Tutoring or
Right.
hey, you're going to come home. We're going to get on Khan Academy and
Yeah.
we're going to,
And
that's the consequence.
That's the consequence. But it's not
ultimately both are
right,
to help you.
To help you.
Yeah.
And I love positive consequences too. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah, positive reinforcement I think is, is
so
always.
and some kids are really motivated by that. They're like all about the stickers and the the bragging rights and all those things. So,
I think a lot of people are. Well, I mean, I think everyone is right. Like if you look at we're in the middle of the NFL playoffs, and they want to win just to get a trophy and a ring, and it's like, I did this, I accomplished this thing, right? And it's just. Who cares, right? Like it's just,
but I think all kids have that need to feel like they've accomplished something and they've contributed to something.
Yeah.
And school is just one way for them to do that. And it's a big way. And if parents see that and use that to their advantage, it can be very rewarding for the kids themselves.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons I started this channel is to help that conversation, right? Like there's a parent and they have a kid and they're like, they don't know what they want to do, right? It's like, okay, well, there's this channel on YouTube and there's so many ways to make money. There's so many ways to serve. There's so many ways to contribute to the world.
Correct.
And it's like, we just have to find what works for you.
Right. Exactly.
And I think a lot of people can't. So like me, right? I just feel like teaching is my thing, right? So when I do this, I feel like I'm teaching people about careers. When I literally taught in the classroom, I loved it. As an inspector, I just teach people about houses now. Like, and if I did something else, like I could go work at McDonald's. And I'm pretty sure I would make my way up to like manager and like, all right, I'm teaching you. And like I just, everything, kind of like you said, like you're like, I love everything. Like I'm that type of person. I think I can do any career. And find fulfillment and find a way to teach in that position.
Yes. Right? I agree. And I've done a lot of other things in between teaching times too. So I can.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. Because you get so teachers get summers off.
Teachers get summers off.
Is that when you're doing this? Or?
No, I actually, I taught for 3 years back in the 90s. And then when they were wiring my classroom for the internet, I took a sabbatical. And so I left when they were just starting to come into the 21st century. And I have 4 of my own kids. Nice. So I took a little break and raised some kids. My kids moved around quite a bit and did other careers for 15 years. And then came back to the classroom in 2014.
So, very cool. Yeah. So what did you dabble in?
I did a lot of, at first, I did just basic stuff, work from home stuff.
Okay.
So I did data entry for a medical billing company, and I did just odd jobs here and there, catering and helping my sister-in-law with things. And then I ended up getting involved in life and health insurance sales. Okay. So I did that for a little while. And then I owned a restaurant and bakery and wedding business and catering. So, And that was really fun for a couple of years while
Okay.
it
While it
lasted.
lasted. Yeah.
While it lasted. And
Yeah.
that was really fun. And I actually brought teaching into it. I would teach classes on
Really?
how to make stuff, and I really loved that part.
Yeah.
And then I moved to Texas and had a little preschool that I ran out of my house and did that for a little while,
Yeah.
just to be able, because I still had really, really little
Okay.
kids,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I just wanted to be home.
Yeah.
So I just opened it up and had like a
Awesome.
small 5-person preschool
Yeah.
that I ran out of my
And
out of my
did
home.
your teaching degree, obviously it helped, but
It did
was it
help.
required?
So how I set it up was it was technically a daycare, but because I was a certified teacher when I moved to Texas, I renewed my credential.
Yeah.
And so I was certified in Texas for early childhood through 6th grade.
Okay.
So I was able to, it wasn't, I dovetailed on that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Oh,
but
very cool.
it was good.
Awesome. How long did it take you to open and establish the bakery?
So I bought it from a friend of mine,
Oh,
and so
okay.
it was already established, and it had been going for a long time. I had actually known my friend, and then she had bought it from another friend of ours.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
we had kind of seen it develop. It was in an area of California that is in the mountains. It's also an apple growing area.
Oh, okay.
So that was really fun to be in a seasonal business. It was very seasonal, which is why we had the other extra businesses on the side.
Oh, okay.
Just to
So out of season, you would just close?
No, we would still be open, but very limited hours. And we just didn't get a lot of people up there during the off season.
Oh, okay.
So we would do weddings in the back. There was an apple orchard in the back of the restaurant that we would have weddings at. And it was lovely and beautiful. And just, there's a lot of really good memories from that time. So
that's super cool.
Yeah.
Do you do anything now in the summers, in your time off?
I usually teach summer school, which is always an adventure. But they have it set up where it's me and another teacher. So it's like, instead of teaching just English or just history, we teach a humanities class. Oh, okay. So I'll go in as because I'm certified in both history and English.
Okay.
And so I'll go in as either role and then teach for part of the block. Okay.
And then what does that look like if I'm a new teacher and I've never done summer school? What does that look like?
So it's a different vibe than the regular school year. Yeah. These are kids that are like, they didn't pass one or more classes. Yeah. They don't really want to be there. But because of the changes in the summer school curriculum, it's actually really fun. Like we have them do more project-based learning so that they're doing projects instead of just rote memorization or just regular assignments. So we try to connect those projects with their interests and what they are interested in to help them be more motivated to actually finish it. So
the whole school year should be like that. I got into my last couple years of teaching. I got into cooperative learning. And so my classroom was loud and just everyone's helping everyone, and it was I really, really liked it. So summer school, the hours are different. How long are you there? 4 weeks, 6 weeks?
Yeah,
how long is that?
How it's been set up the last few years is it's 4 weeks. Okay. 4 to 4 weeks. And it's just in the morning. So I usually teach 2 blocks. Okay. So it'll be from 8 to noon, usually for the kids. Oh, okay. Or noon 30 or 12:30. Sorry. Yeah. So you have the first block, which is a 2-hour block, and then a little break, and then the second block. Okay. And usually within those blocks, they serve lunch, they serve breakfast, they do like the regular school stuff. Yeah. And they do have buses that run. So they have one consolidated campus for the district. Okay. So they'll run buses from the home campuses. So the kids just have to make it to their home campus, get on the bus, and then the bus will take them to the middle school campus. Okay. So it's different. It's very minimalist. Nice. Like there's nothing on the walls, and everybody's just, I mean, we put the kids stuff up on the walls, but it's very, a lot more laid back. Yeah. But still you have these expectations. They just look different in the summer school environment.
Very cool. So you recommend working summer school?
I would recommend working summer school if you are there for the kids. If you're there for the money, then it's not great, because they're still like, they're not your high flyers. It's still a struggle for them to be there, and it's still a struggle for them to buy into this whole business.
Okay.
So
very cool. I like that. I think for anything, I interviewed a real estate agent, and he said the same thing, right? Like he said, if you're in it because during COVID, like real estate just blew up.
Yeah.
And so he said there was a lot of people that were in it for the money.
For the money.
He goes, now they're kind of being, pushed out. But I think for anything, that's just a life lesson. If you're in it for the money, like
exactly,
just don't do that.
It's not worth it.
Yeah, no, it's not. And you're not helping anyone just being there. Oh, I'm just here to make a quick buck.
Yeah.
I don't think. Yeah, we're not about that.
Especially in middle school.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything you've tried? So like when I was a teacher, I did Uber and Lyft, and I drove for Amazon. Like I've tried those things. Have you tried anything like that?
Right now I'm currently editing and proofreading books on the side and publishing books. So
nice.
It's a huge learning curve. So and I've just started this in the last year. So it's just getting off the ground.
And how did you find that?
I don't even remember. Honestly, I don't remember. Because I don't really know anyone that does it in real life, but so I'm sure it was some ad on the internet. And so, and there's lots of ways to make money online. And I was looking for something so the thing that I liked about selling life and health insurance, besides like teaching people about money, is that once you write your contract or your policy, then as the client pays each month, then you get a little residual.
Okay.
So I like that idea of working once and getting paid continually after that. I like that idea. So I was looking for something that it was similar in that process. And I had thought about going back into life and health insurance sales. My neighbor does it. She's trying to recruit me to be to do it too. But I was like, I don't know. It just didn't feel right. It didn't feel like it fit in with where my life is right now. So I think I came across this on the internet of someone that was publishing books online and through Amazon. And I was like, that sounds interesting. And so it was just something that I've always wanted to write books. And so it was a way for me to figure out how to write books and publish them and self-publish. So then that opened up the world of proofreading and editing and doing all that kind of stuff, because people are always looking for people that do that. So.
Very cool.
It fits in well. With being an English teacher.
I was gonna say. I am in the process of writing a book.
Are you?
But I don't have anyone to. Because it's funny because I'll sit there and I'll write. It's just a Google Doc. Right?
That's how I do mine too.
I'm at like 20,000 words.
Okay, you're almost there.
But then I go back and read it, and I'm like, this is terrible. Like I'm like, I would not read this book.
I do that a lot. But then I have people that I send my work to help me through that process, because when you do it yourself, you're so self-critical.
I'm like deleting whole pages.
I know. Like, this is trash. What am I doing? Never gonna beat it off. You will. It's a process, and you really do need people around you to help you through it. Because like I said, if it's up to me, nothing would get done. But then I'll go back and I'll look at things that I wrote 3 or 4 years ago that I forgot that I wrote until I come across it. And I'm like, hey, that's pretty good. So don't beat yourself up. You're better than you think you are.
Have you published any books?
I am almost published. Like I'm so close. Like it should be happening in the next few weeks.
Very cool. What's the genre?
So I do nonfiction. I focus on nonfiction books. Right now, the one that's closest to being published is actually a restaurant guide for San Antonio.
Oh, cool.
Because I love restaurants and I love eating out, and I love the local places. And so I've put together a little book on just restaurant guides. It'll probably never make it to print, but it will be an e-edition for sure.
Oh, there you go.
Because most people aren't going to carry a book around anymore, but they will carry their phone. So I'll put it on e-edition out there. So that's what's coming up next. And then I have another book on anxious attachment theory that's coming out. That's about 30,000 words that I'm at right now. So that's still in the editing phase though. So it'll be another month or two before that comes out.
Awesome. So very cool. Well,
all of these things.
We'll put it out there when we publish this video.
Post the link below.
There you go. Go do that. Okay, so after summer school, what do you do on your time off?
I hang out with my kids and I love to travel. So traveling and teaching are really my very most favorite things to do. So it depends on the year and depends on where I'm at, but I do love to travel. And it's usually road trips around. So we've been all over the Western United States. And
very cool.
My parents are in California, so we do a trip to California at least once a year. But do
you have a favorite destination or a favorite memory?
Any place new, honestly. I love to explore new places. I went to visit some friends in Guatemala just in November. So that was a whole new world that I had never had anything, but I was surprised at how familiar it was. Just in a lot of ways, because it's like, oh, we have those trees at our house, and we have, the mountains look like in California, just different. It was just kind of a cool experience to have something be familiar but new at the same time. And I love that part. So
very cool. I don't travel very often, but I went to Guadalajara once, and it reminded me a lot of Monterrey. I was like, this reminds me a lot of and so it's funny that you say that. So y'all do mostly driving, road trips?
Yes. So mostly driving and road trips. But again, my mom was really good about raising, I'm one of 5 kids, and my mom and dad both were very much, the world is there to explore, and it's an amazing place. And they instilled a love of learning and travel and being open to new experiences. And so most of my siblings and I have done quite a bit of traveling, and it's fun to swap stories and find out where their next adventure is taking them. And
have you? So my sister has the goal to take her son to every state before he turns 18.
That's adventurous.
How many? Do you know your state count?
I wish I could say it was more, but I've mostly just been in the Western, all the Western states. I've been in like west of the Mississippi.
Oh, nice.
I've been.
That's a lot.
It's still a lot.
I think mine is like 5. I don't travel. I've been to Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma,
I haven't
Florida.
been to Mexico, which blows my mind still that I've been living this close literally my whole life, either in California or in Texas.
A 3-hour drive.
It's why haven't I been to Mexico? What's wrong with me?
You should go. And Mexico is one of those countries that has like, you can go to places that are very, very historic, or you can go places that are just very modern and rich, and you know.
Yes.
And it has everything. It has beaches and mountains and
I again, why have I not been there?
You need to go instead of going west, go south.
I need to go south next. So and I've been to a few states east of the Mississippi. I've been to Tennessee, and that's it. But I want to go to New York. I want to go. I want to travel to the eastern part. I feel like I'm halfway there. Like I live in the middle of the United States. I should see the eastern half now. So.
Do you? I know teachers are famous for taking work home. What is your thought on that?
So, as someone that has trained new teachers, I tell them upfront: anytime you learn a new job, it's going to be a lot more work in the beginning. And if you go into it understanding that it is more work, give yourself 3 years minimum to really understand your job and understand the different parts and set up the systems that work for you.
Yeah.
But that takes time, and that takes, you got to figure that out for yourself.
Yeah.
So the first 3 years are a lot of work at home.
Yeah.
Just because you're trying to figure it out. You're trying to figure out what grading looks like for you. You're trying to figure out what your organization looks like for you. You're trying to figure out how to manage all the extra paperwork that goes along with it. So in the beginning, yes, you have a lot of stuff that you end up taking home.
Yeah.
But I've been doing it in this round for 10 years now.
Yeah.
And so I try to leave everything at work. I try to get everything done. If I need to come in early and work early, I will. I still have a habit of bringing home a stack of papers every Friday.
Okay.
And they just ride in my car.
It's kind of like the fruit I take to work. I do that with fruit. I pack myself lunch and then I take the apple to work and I bring it home.
It's there. Like if I feel like grading, it's there. It's ready.
Yeah.
But honestly, I really only work at home maybe not even an hour a week.
Yeah, that's
not
good.
Even an hour a week.
That's good.
So
that's good to hear.
Although when you get to the end, like the end of the semester or the end of the grading period, I find myself working more.
Okay.
And then at the beginning of the year, trying to get ready for the year, I do put in quite a few hours just to get ready.
And then your specific subject, is there a lot of reading when you're grading, or how is that?
Yes. So I taught math for a bit. I taught sixth grade math for a bit.
Yeah.
And I like teaching math for the teaching the math part.
Yeah.
But I found myself, I hated grading numbers. Like, I don't know what it was. It was just like the most boring thing. And it was like I just didn't want to do it. And I really but so then I moved to history and I taught history for a while and I loved it because of all the creative stuff that the kids would come up with and all the crazy answers, the King of Prussia. Okay. But we're talking about Hawaii. Where does this come from? So I found myself really liking knowing what the kids are thinking.
Yeah.
And you really can't do that teaching math. I mean, you know the process and stuff, but for me, I really like reading what the kids have to say.
Yeah.
Because it's entertaining.
I didn't think about that.
It's really entertaining.
I was thinking the opposite because elementary, it's pretty easy to grade.
Yeah.
But I was like, man, I couldn't imagine sitting there. The longest thing I had to do was in fourth grade with the writing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But, But I didn't think about the...
it's entertaining.
Yeah.
And so, but the thing is that if every single assignment is short answer or extended response answers where you're reading multiple paragraphs, when you have 200 students, it becomes impossible. That's all you end up doing is just the grading part. So you have to find a balance. They need to have some kind of mix of easier grading type assignments with then when I try to do is I make sure that those longer answer responses are really, really poignant and to the point and really show their thinking and are not just fluff kind of answers.
Yeah.
So and again, that's something that you figure out over time and you have to spend the time to figure it out what works for you and what you're looking for.
And are you coming up with these assessments? Quizzes, tests?
It's a combination.
Okay.
So you are given the district does provide some end of unit type assessments that you're required to give.
Yeah.
The state obviously provides some testing. There's also another layer that they've added with MAP testing, which is tracking your reading ability. It's it's a whole separate testing thing. Yeah. But what I do in my day-to-day classroom is either I come up with it myself or it's a material that was used either by another teacher or someone else did that unit before and they used those materials. And so I feel like my job as a teacher is more of a combination of, number one, taking what's already been done because you don't want to reinvent the wheel every time.
Okay.
Because again, it's the time element.
Yeah.
You just don't have the time to do that. But as a teacher, as a professional, you need to decide what's going to work best for your students.
Yeah.
So if you find something already made that you feel like meets the needs of the students at the time and what you're focusing on for teaching, then you use it and you move forward with it.
Yeah.
But I have found that I always end up modifying in some way to meet the needs of the kids that I'm currently teaching.
Yeah.
And even year to year, you might do the same types of material year to year, but you have different kids every year.
Yeah.
And I've noticed since COVID, every year has been very different with the group as a whole.
Okay.
Because of what they missed out on during that COVID year.
Yeah.
And it's developmental. It's also academic. Whatever, gaps that they're missing in their learning because of COVID, or just what that did developmentally to them at that age, then creates different consequences as they get older.
Yeah.
So that's been really fascinating to me to see how that's unfolding and continues to unfold.
Yeah.
So.
Wow, interesting. And can you speak to, on the parent side, like we see kids with missing assignments, sometimes with a 0.
Right.
One time my son had a 5, literally a 5 on an assignment.
Yeah.
We later on go to find out he had turned it in so late. I don't know. I don't remember. Part of it was like really, really, really late.
Okay.
So she gave him like partial credit.
Yeah.
What does that look like in your classroom as far as, once it's in the system as missing or 0 or?
So our official district policy for middle school is that the kids can turn in work up to the last week.
Okay. Anyway.
No. Let me backtrack. Forget I just said that. Erase that part. The official district policy is they can turn in late work up to the unit test.
Okay.
So if you're working on, I don't know, figurative language or whatever it is, the unit that you're on, and you take that unit final test, that assessment, technically the teacher doesn't have to take any work beyond that. Okay. That's late.
Yeah, because you're moving on to the next
because
thing.
We're moving on to the next thing. That's technically what it is. Okay. But I don't know any teacher, honestly, in middle school level that can keep track of that and monitor that. And because middle school is learning how to become more independent.
Yeah.
And you've got all the hormones thrown in, and you're like, I'm trying to learn how to be an adult, and I've got more freedoms, and I've got multiple classes. And so they're kind of a hot mess. Yeah. And I kind of love that about middle school because it's like, you know what? Y'all are trying to figure it out. So you're learning boundaries, you're learning consequences. Yeah. You want to be so individualistic, but yet you're all kind of the same. But you all fall into the same little categories. Right? It's so interesting to see how hard they try to be individually the same. But a lot of kids don't understand that. And their brains are like they're like a mess because they're exploding with newness. Yeah. So a lot of kids, it takes them a while to figure out, oh, you mean like when I turn it in, that's when I'm supposed to turn it in, right? And some teachers have a very no, this is how it is. And they're very hard-nosed about it. But I've always been the teacher of, look, it's not over till it's over. Yeah, so if you're going to put the effort in and the work in to do this, then I'm going to take it up until probably the very end. So it's a disadvantage to me. Yeah. But I feel like, especially in 6th grade, when they're coming off of elementary school into middle school, it's like they've got enough stuff to worry about. Like late grades, if you and your parents, because we know that this is where it's actually coming from, are going to take the time and the effort to put it in, then I'm going to give you some credit for that. And I always take off a late penalty, but it's not 50%; it's 20%. So
the district has
the district
its grading policy
is very, very But again, it's like we're all learning here. We're all trying to get it figured out. And to me, the most important part is, are you learning and are you moving forward and are you learning from your mistakes? Yeah. So now when parents come to me and say, well, back in October and it's now January, they didn't turn this in. It's like, well, sorry, the grading period's closed. And I can't.
I literally can't change the report card.
Can't change it.
Yeah.
So,
And then from the parent side, because I was a teacher, a lot
mhm.
of the times I will I will, I don't want to say believe the teacher more, but I will side more with the teacher
Right.
initially. Like
Exactly.
if
Yeah.
there's an issue, I'm gonna start by siding with the teacher, and
Mhm.
then okay, but still we're gonna have a
Right. We're still
conversation.
gonna have a
I want to hear
conversation.
your side of it, but
Absolutely.
um, is that if for let's say your child had a teacher that was like, sorry, this is the policy and
Uh-huh.
can't accept it anymore. What how would you handle that?
So then it becomes, okay, this is a life lesson,
Yeah.
because you're going to meet people in any profession you go
Yeah.
into that are really hard-nosed about things.
Yeah.
And you also have to understand that in life, you have to have the self-discipline
Yeah.
to move yourself forward.
Mhm.
No one's going to be there to take, you have
Yeah,
your
yeah.
village to help you.
Mhm.
But if you really want to move yourself forward,
Yeah.
it has to come from you.
Yes.
So it's learning to work with different types of people.
Yeah.
And this is what I've told my own kids this,
Yeah.
because we've had the same situation in my
Okay.
home.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, there's going to be some teachers that are really, really difficult to work with.
Yeah.
So you've got to make a decision then. Is this something that I can work with myself?
Mhm.
Or is this something that maybe we need to look into a change, or maybe we need to look into
Okay.
adjusting something
Yeah.
and change yourself to fit this mold?
Yeah.
Which again, I think is just, we do that as adults all the
Yeah.
time,
Mhm.
trying to work with people and,
Yeah.
and trying to make it successful for them.
Yeah.
I can say, I know one of my kids was really struggling in math as well.
Mhm.
He had done okay, and then he hit 8th grade, and it was like, oh my gosh, mind was blown.
Yeah.
But I also understand that child development wise, like,
Mhm.
your brain's not quite ready for algebra in 8th grade.
Okay.
And most people's brains aren't. There are some, and that's why we
Yeah, yeah.
have that avenue for those that
Yeah.
are. But, I said, okay, well, this is our choices. You can struggle with this for a
Mhm.
while and see how you do.
Yeah.
And so he did. He struggled.
Yeah.
And every day was a struggle. But
Yeah.
he went through 9 weeks of just like trying to make it work.
Mhm.
And then he hit a point where he himself was like, this isn't helping me,
Yeah.
and I'm not understanding it. And
Mhm.
and so we need to like make a change at that point.
Yeah.
And so we were able to do that. Fortunately, the school is flexible enough that we were able to make that change.
Yeah. Oh, that's
And
good.
now he's thriving because he's at a point where he understands,
Yeah.
and then he can move forward from there.
Mm.
But learning is a process. It's not
Yeah.
like you
Yeah.
know what I mean? And
Mhm.
and struggle is part of that process.
Yeah.
And so if you've got a really hard-nosed teacher, I think that you've got to make that
Yeah.
decision for yourself. Because I
Yeah.
remember having hard-nosed teachers when I was a kid,
Yeah.
and you learn, and sometimes you fail, and it's hard,
Yeah.
but you learn more from that failure than always try to
Yeah.
take the easy way.
You grow.
Yeah,
You grow.
absolutely.
Mhm. Very cool. I like it. You mentioned COVID earlier.
Hmm.
What because obviously you taught
I
before, now
did.
you're teaching after, and you taught during.
Yeah.
How was that?
So I
any
remember,
part of that?
yeah, I remember distinctly having a conversation with one of my colleagues right before spring break of 2020.
Oh,
It
okay.
was literally 2 days before spring break.
Yeah, yeah.
And we were both overwhelmed and exhausted and could not understand how we could keep maintaining
Hmm.
the requirements and expectations that were expected of teachers.
Yeah,
Like, we were just like, the system is broken and we can't
yeah.
keep doing everything that they keep asking us to do.
Hmm.
It's going to break.
Yeah.
And then we shut down for COVID.
Wow.
And it's been so interesting to me because I reflect back to that conversation,
Yeah.
because then a year later, I had a conversation with an administrator
Mhm.
about how they were so excited to get back to normal
Okay.
after COVID, after
Yeah.
that year of being shut down and like doing
Yeah.
online learning and all of that stuff. And I looked at this administrator and I said, you really think it was better
Yeah.
before?
Yeah.
And from my perspective, all COVID did was uncover all of
Mm.
the issues that were failing.
Present, yeah.
Like, it just opened it up and amplified what was already wrong.
Yeah.
with the system.
Mm-hmm.
And so there seems to be these different trains of thoughts with people that are making decisions about education, the education system.
Yeah.
One is we need to go back to how it was,
Mm-hmm.
which as a teacher, I'm just like letting everybody know it's not great. Like it wasn't great before.
Yeah.
It was not great before.
Yeah.
Another one is we need to completely change everything and turn everything upside down.
Yeah.
Which again, as a teacher that has been through lots and lots of changes, that isn't always the best option either. But what we do need is to take the best that we learned during COVID and understand that those same things can be applied and really listen to what the concerns of the teachers are as we move forward, having teachers have a say at the table.
Yeah.
So
I read a book called Switch.
Okay.
Very, very interesting book. One of the stories I love about that book was there was a I may butcher it, but there was a guy that was tasked to go to a country in Africa and where there was a community where children were not receiving the nutrition they So he goes and he had, I don't know, 6 weeks, 6 months. It was a short amount of time to, basically figure out how are we going to help this community feed their children. Okay. Well, his idea was, he went and he looked at the kids and he's like, okay, there's some kids that look healthy and they're,
right.
He goes, they're obviously like receiving nutrition, like they're being fed well, like they're thriving. Okay. He goes, what is happening at their house? Right? Like what are their parents doing that they're not malnourished, right?
Okay.
So his idea was, okay, let's get all the kids that are healthy and doing good, and let's figure out what the mom's doing. How are they feeding them? Who's serving the food?
Right.
What are they eating? Right.
Yeah.
And then so they ended up creating this community class where the moms that had the kids that were doing well would teach the other moms, like, this is how we eat, this is when we eat, this is how much we eat, right? And so he was like, it's already happening in the community.
Yes.
Like, I'm not going to bring my Western, like, I'm here and I'm going to fix everything and I'm the hero.
Yeah.
Right. And so kind of the same thing, like you said, right? Like with education, it's like, okay, what's already working?
What's already working?
And let's figure that out. And let's go into the classrooms of the teachers that are being successful. And let's look at the kids that are being successful and what's happening at home, what's happening at school, what's happening.
Yes. And understand that the school is limited in its scope.
Yeah.
The school cannot be the social worker and the language provider and the nutritionist but yet that's what the school has evolved into and is what is expected to have all of these roles. And while I do agree that there is a place for that, I don't know if it necessarily has to be every school has to be that.
Yeah.
Because again, it's the community. It goes back to the community and what the community needs for that specific community.
And then what are your thoughts on when people say, like, why don't they teach finances at school? Why don't they teach, like, why don't they teach all these things at school?
And again, it's like we do, but you have to understand that school is very isolated.
Yeah.
So you might learn something in school.
Yeah.
But applying it to the real world is a whole different experience.
Yeah.
So I've looked at schools across the world, actually, that use different, like, I don't even know how to explain it in US terms. Their school is set in an environment that is not institutionalized.
Okay.
So you might have your school proper, your school building.
Yeah.
But classes are held outdoors.
Okay.
Or classes are held in businesses. Or even like my own personal experience going into teaching where I was a junior and it was my first year of my program.
Yeah.
But the very first semester of my program, I was in the classroom.
Yeah.
So I was actually in the environment that I was getting trained in.
Yeah.
So we do teach finance. It's part of the curriculum. We do teach like basic life skills. You have a government class and that teaches you about how the government works and how to vote, why voting is important and all of those things. But unless you're actually actively in that environment, it doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't transfer. So, you know, because I have kids all the time. Why do we have to learn about student loans? Like, because they're in sixth grade. That's not their world. But it's part of the curriculum. Like we teach it. But if it's not, not relevant, like it's like, why is this, you know, why do we have to learn about, you know, debit cards? You know, that I get that one a lot. And they don't understand unless, but then I have that kid who's like, well, my parents like make me do this and make me do that. And so I have a bank account and I have a debit card. And so it's easy for them to understand how it works because it's relevant. So that's the other thing too, is like, you know, they say, well, you should, well, we do actually. We actually do.
That's good. I like that. I like that answer.
But if it's not relevant to their life,
that's
if
true.
they're not applying it in their, when they go home, then it's like, I remembered it for the test. So again, it goes back to that grade thing. Like, what do you know? What are you learning? Or what are you just being held accountable in your short-term memory bank for? So
my mom is extremely good at math.
Okay.
But specifically fractions.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, since she was young, she would bake.
Yes.
And then whenever when we came to the United States, she was the baker at Luby's, making all the cakes and pies.
Right.
So I remember being in high school, we're at home and she's just like converting things. I'm like, what the heck?
How do you know this?
So then I get to elementary, and then one year I taught second grade and we're introducing fractions.
Right.
And I'm like, everyone does the pizza thing, like, you know, like
I remember that.
And I'm like, man, I was like, if these kids could go home and bake, like I wouldn't even have to teach any of this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Yeah. So
that's exactly it.
Yeah, we're trying to teach a lot of things out of context. But like you said, it takes time, it takes money, it takes resources, it's impossible to teach.
You can't.
All of those things.
You just can't. And because again, we're humans, like we're so different and we have such different experiences that we bring to the table. And I think that's the beautiful thing about teaching, especially in public schools, because you get people from all over in one room doing, you know, trying to learn the same thing with their own backgrounds and their own experiences. But, you know, so you always end up with something comical at the end.
You said public school. I want to ask you another question.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on private school and charter schools, you know, public schools? What are your thoughts on as a teacher, as a parent, as a citizen of your community?
So I've seen the rise of charter schools happen. I have a lot of conflicting thoughts because out of my 4 kids, I have one that graduated from public high school in the district or in the school that we were zoned for, attendance zone. My next one graduated from a magnet program, which is within the public school, within the district, they create these little magnet programs. And and that was good for him.
It's like a
specialized thing. And he's now in college and he's building on what he learned in the magnet program. And so it was a very good fit for him. However, with the magnet program within the public schools, it takes away from the neighborhood schools because your neighborhood kids now are going to a different school. So I've also taught in a school that was greatly impacted by both magnet program and charter schools. And the enrollment plummeted so much that they're now going to be closing that school.
Wow.
And so that perspective, like I have thoughts about that too. Like, your podcast is not long enough. And then my third child is actually in high school now, and she's doing a private online high school.
Oh, wow.
Because of her own like physical and emotional mental health issues. And also because that was the best fit for her and her learning style.
Yeah.
And so she's like not even enrolled in a public school right now,
Okay.
but she'll be graduating early because of this program that again was the perfect fit for her and where she was. And then I have my youngest who actually is on school choice.
Oh,
wow. So he's not going to the school that the neighborhood school that we live in, but he's going to the school that I teach at.
Oh, perfect.
And so I think it depends on the kid. I like having these choices available, but again, the consequences, there's always good and bad results from that.
Yeah.
So the good thing is that my kids have been their education has been very tailored to what they need.
Yeah.
But the downside is we also have schools closing because of the choices.
Yeah.
So
I like that. I never thought about that. So I grew up in the public school system. I taught in the public school system. My kids go to the public school system.
Right.
I don't know much about private school. I don't know much about charter schools. So I don't have much to say, but I know there are some people that are just, private school is everything. And there's some people that are charter schools are better than, they try to compare like this is better and this is better and this is better.
Apples to oranges.
And I like your perspective on, well, what does your child need?
Yeah.
Because there's some kids that go to private school that don't do well.
No,
there's some that go to private school and just thrive.
Right.
And same thing, public, charter, I think anywhere, homeschool. Like there's kids that do well in those environments, the kids that don't do well in those environments. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the goal as a parent is your job is to raise responsible adults.
Yeah.
Like that's your job is to figure out what your child needs and what their strengths are and how they can contribute as good adults.
Yeah.
And so
I like that.
Structuring their experiences as children to help them be successful so that they have within themselves the assurance that they can go out and then contribute to society as well.
Yeah.
And there's so many different ways to do that now, which again, it's good and bad. It's good and bad. And so I think recognizing that there isn't just one way and that you just need to know your child and what's best for your child.
Yeah. I thought about that. I actually had a book idea. So the book I'm writing is on finances because I'm a certified financial coach.
Okay.
When I was 15, I started taking, the Dave Ramsey financial. I went through Financial Peace University. My button is on my shelf. I have a little button that says FPU graduate. And early on in, high school, college, marriage, I was very, no debt and we didn't have credit cards and we'd buy cars cash and it was just
Yeah.
Since then, we've come a little bit this way. We do borrow now.
Life happens.
Yeah.
Yep. Life happens.
Yeah. We still, when we do borrow, we borrow responsibly and we borrow mostly to invest, but not.
And it's a tool.
Not like, yes, it's a tool.
It's a tool.
Yeah. But we haven't gone all the way where there's people that just operate with debt and just, leverage and, that's the best, right?
Right.
And so we're kind of in the middle, a little bit more on the conservative. I still use cash for mostly everything. I went to the movies and I couldn't use cash. And
they switched over.
Yeah.
Now.
And they're like, well, we have an ATM that'll convert your cash to a card. And I was like, I don't want to do that. So I ended up using my debit card.
Wild.
I was like, doesn't it say wild. Isn't it illegal to not accept my cash? Anyways. Yeah.
That is wild.
So places like that, I end up using my debit card. Anyways, well, I had an idea for another book called Unintended Consequences, right?
Okay,
like there's things that we do, there's choices that we make. Every choice that you make has the intended consequence, right?
Right.
But it also has these unintended consequences. Because anything you say yes to, you're saying no to something else, right?
Absolutely.
And so I haven't developed enough ideas around it to... But I'm going to use that example.
Okay. Use it away.
Yeah. But what are there any other effects or changes you saw through COVID?
Through COVID, I think at least the teachers at my school during COVID, and I've heard lots of every teacher had such a different experience with COVID.
Yeah.
And so my experience may not be There isn't even a normal experience. Because I have friends that ended up with 200 kids on their caseload because their administration's like, we just lost a teacher. We need to consolidate this class. Y'all are teaching online anyway. So what's another 100 kids? And, or 300 or, like massive amounts of kids on teaching online. For me, it was an easy transition because I had already set up, I was working with a planning partner that was very technology savvy. And I have always been, I've always kind of gravitated towards the new technology stuff anyway. So we were set up in Google Classroom. We already had online lessons. There was a learning curve, but it was not steep and sharp like a lot of my colleagues who were like, we don't use technology at all. Wow. And now you want us to teach online and record lessons and have everything digital. Like that was a huge shift. And so coming out of COVID, I feel like there's the biggest thing is now flexibility. As a classroom teacher, a lot of teachers were trained to use these technology tools, which I think the kids they need because that's their world. And with AI being introduced and it just exploding in multiple ways, it's shifting and changing the job market drastically. And so the kids now more than ever need teachers that are adept at technology, are used to pivoting very quickly, and are used to being flexible in their thinking without losing sight of like core things that need to be taught. So I think out of all of that, I think that's been the good thing that has come out of COVID because I feel like more teachers are able to do that. Whereas before it was very like, this is how we've always done it. And this is how we do things. And it was very, very rigid, but now it's forced flexibility among a lot of teachers that maybe wasn't there before.
Interesting.
So,
and do you think, I don't know, do you think the new teachers not having gone through COVID, like is, I don't know if you teach with anyone that's new and they're like, this is just, I don't want to say normal, but do they know about?
Well, that's the thing is that even before COVID, new teachers coming into the profession don't know what they don't know. And so, the teachers that are coming in now, they experienced COVID. If they're coming in fresh out of high school to college, they actually experienced COVID as a student. So they have that perspective that I don't have. Like, I don't have that perspective other than I was working on my master's degree when all of it went down. But so they have a different perspective. And I see this, and I remember this at the very beginning of my career back in the 90s when we were all like, had overhead projectors and purple dittos. I still did purple dittos for my copies. Like there was no copies.
Purple ditto, I don't know what that is.
You don't even know what that is. Like
I started teaching in 2007.
It was like a carbon copy, I guess. I don't know how else to describe it. And you'd put it on the machine and then you'd run it.
Oh, really?
It has like a certain smell and like your fingers would be all purple. And I wrote on chalkboards. Like I feel like I taught in the 1800s.
That's funny.
And so
did you have the kids with the erasers?
I got to clap the erasers after school. And oh my gosh, that was before No Child Left Behind. That was before we had standardized testing, but it wasn't like it is now. Like it's really different. So I think, and I remember teachers back then as a new teacher looking at these seasoned teachers just complaining about all the new things and everything's changing. And, so it's like, it kind of feels the same, but now it's just like, okay. And I think that's why people leave teaching is because the newness and the changes become too much. And there's a million reasons why. But it's, adding to your plate. So I don't know. I just never wanted to be that teacher though, that was like, it's there's new, these kids these days, they don't know what they, like I never wanted to be that teacher. So I've tried to stay flexible and adaptable. And it's like, okay, well, maybe this is a good change. We should try it out and see how it works.
I'm the same. I'm the same when it comes to kids, right? like I know people that where teenagers annoy them. They're just like, oh, they're annoying and they
Yeah.
don't know anything, and and I'm like, I just see potential.
Right.
I'm just like, man,
Yeah.
these kids are gonna,
Yeah.
especially with the technology that we didn't grow up with.
Exactly.
So I was in a generation where I grew up without the internet, and then kind of in my childhood, the internet became a thing. And I don't know how my parents looked at us, right? Because we just like I want to go to the game room and I want to log on, right? And or I want to play video games or whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't. Yeah, I don't look at my kids like with phones and internet and AI and this stuff as like a bad thing, right? Like obviously there should be guardrails, right?
You got to know how to manage it.
Yeah, like anything. But it's exciting if they learn how to use it, and it's a tool that helps them now improve on what our generation built. Like, okay, now improve on it. And,
yes. And that's what it is. It's just improving on what came before. And so to me, it's just fascinating to see, well, how are you going to, what are you going to do with this?
Yeah.
Where's this going to go next?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I'm excited to see. Imagine like old, like 80 and 90-year-olds like seeing like a robot, like the Tesla robot and the self-driving cars.
Yes.
Like,
they'll still freak me out.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I haven't been in a self-driving car. I saw a video of this guy that took a taxi, a self-driving car.
Right, yeah.
And it was going around in circles in the parking lot.
No.
And he's on the phone with tech support.
Yeah.
And he's like, I got to get to the airport.
This is not working.
Yeah. So, but like anything has that, anything has, like nothing's perfect. No system's perfect. No.
And you don't know what's going to go wrong until you try it.
Yeah. Yes.
Which is scary.
That's a life
in
lesson.
Our little perfectionist minds. No, it has to be perfect. No. It's not going to be perfect ever.
No. I think that perspective you said about the new teachers now having gone through COVID as students. You need to bring that up at a faculty meeting.
I know. Yeah. It's like, you got to understand that they, this is normal to them.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Talk to people about faculty meetings. What is that like?
I've been in really good faculty meetings, and I've been really not good faculty meetings.
Yeah.
So I'm currently at a school that really honors their teachers' time.
Okay.
So our faculty meetings are short, sweet, to the point.
Oh, nice.
And if it can be an email, it's an email.
Okay.
And I really, really appreciate that as a
Yeah.
teacher, because again, I've been in schools where faculty meetings go on and on and on, and it doesn't really serve the majority of the teachers.
Yeah.
And if you have a need with an individual teacher, then address it with the individual teacher.
Yeah.
Don't bring it up in the faculty meeting. So, and I think once you get, I know when I was first, so I feel like I have two phases of my teaching career. One was the 90s in elementary school.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was a whole different experience than post like millennium.
Yeah.
So starting in 2014, it's just been a different experience. So my first, and I was out of the classroom for 15 years.
Wow.
So when I went back in the classroom, it was a totally different landscape.
Yeah.
So I had to pretty much relearn how to be a teacher.
Okay.
Because everything was completely different.
Yeah.
So I started by subbing, and I really did that for about a year and a half before I really found a school that I really could connect with and really wanted to be a part of their staff. And then it was the first probably 3 or 4 years of just what everyone was learning in college at the time. I didn't get. Like, I didn't get any of that instruction.
Yeah.
And so I had to learn it on the job. And I had to, and unfortunately I had a really good mentor, other teachers that were helping me. I went to some really good trainings.
Yeah.
And then the faculty meetings became part of that process.
Okay.
So as a new teacher, I did get a lot out of the faculty meetings that I went to because everything was new.
Yeah.
And so I was just like a sponge, just trying to absorb all the things. But as I've moved through my career, now I'm at a point where it's like all of this other stuff, I don't necessarily need to sit here and listen to because it's not a good use of my time.
Yeah.
But again, when you have a staff of 50 teachers and they're all from the very bottom to the very top, it's like, how do you balance that?
Yeah.
And it's very different from administrator to administrator, like principal to principal.
Yeah.
Whew, there's a huge disparity out there. So currently, I'm just grateful.
Yeah.
I'm just thankful and grateful that I am where I am right now at this moment, because it's a good balance of what you need to know and what you need to sit through.
Yeah. I thought of 3 questions, and I don't want to forget.
Yeah, write them down.
So the first one is, do you recommend potential teachers sub to kind of
Absolutely. Subbing gives you a glimpse to what it is to be a teacher. It doesn't give you the full experience, but it gives you enough of the experience to really know what teaching is like.
Yeah. Okay. And then the other one was during that break, did you keep your license active, or did it just expire and then you renewed?
So I'm actually was licensed in 3 states, Utah, California, and now Texas.
Okay.
And so I kept my license active in California. I think there was one lapse. Like, there was a few years that I let it lapse.
Okay.
And then as my kids started getting older, I was looking into subbing again. And so I renewed my credential and then ended up moving to Texas. So when I moved to Texas, I had an active California credential that I was able then to apply to Texas, and I just had to take their certification test.
Okay. And is it just one test?
So there's 2 main it depends on your certification.
Okay.
So they have a main pedagogy test to where, do you understand what it means to be a teacher? Like teacher type situations. Can you handle them okay? And that's the pedagogy test. And then you've got another content specific test. So when I moved to Texas, I had a California K through 6 credential, generalist type credential. So the closest thing that transferred was the EC through 6 generalist, which is what I tested for and got. And then once in Texas, once you have that credential, then you can just test in other areas. And if you pass a test, then you get the credential. So now I've got way too many.
So what do you have now?
So when I started here in Texas, I started in 6th grade because in middle school, because after subbing, that's the other thing about subbing is you really learn the schools. You learn the different ages of kids. You learn do I like the older kids, the middle kids, the younger kids? Like, where do I fit best? And so I realized that I can't go back to elementary school. There's just no way. Because of how many changes had happened since I last taught elementary. And I was like, it was just too overwhelming for me, honestly. But I love teaching middle school. I love subbing in middle school. So I was like, okay, what can I do with what I have? And so I ended up getting a 4 through 8 English and social studies certification.
Oh, cool.
Because again, I had that issue of I don't know what I like the most. I like doing all of it. So I realized that really history was where I really loved, and I wanted to do that for a while. But I also liked the ELAR version. I liked having that component as well. So they do have in Texas an ELAR and social studies combined for 4 through 8. So that was the next one that I got.
And was there a study guide that you?
Yeah, they have all kinds of guides, and you can pay someone to tutor you and go through that. So you can have someone help you through that process as well.
Cool.
But I just studied for it online. There's materials online, and there's little guidebooks that you can purchase online to get that.
Very cool.
So
you have those 2. What other ones do you have?
So then after teaching for a while, because you don't know what you don't know, so I had to teach and kind of figure it out. I realized I would love to do high school at some point. And so I got my 7 through 12 social studies credential.
Oh, nice.
So now that's an option for me. So how did I end up in 6th grade ELAR? I ended up in 6th grade ELAR because I was at a point in my career where I was feeling very frustrated. I was going through a lot of changes personally. And the school that I was at had been through some administrative changes.
Okay.
And I also was seeing the writing on the wall, where myself and my position, I was not effective for the leadership position that I was in because of the change in administration. Because again,
Yeah.
when you're in education, you deal with personalities,
Yeah.
any profession.
Mhm.
But if my master's degree is in teacher leadership, and so my focus is to be an advocate for teachers, and my master's degree involves working with administration. So I actually did the administrative classes.
Oh, okay.
So I understand how
Yeah.
administration works, and I
Mhm.
understand what they need, and I understand what their constraints are
Yeah.
as administrators. And so I believe right now in education, what's missing is this middle teacher leadership thing. Because
Yeah.
when you go in to become a teacher, that's it. You're a teacher.
Yeah.
And so if you want to make more money in education, you have to go into administration,
Yeah.
which is a totally different job.
Yeah.
That is not the same job as being a teacher.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's no way for teachers to grow and develop within their field
Mhm.
and be compensated for that extra knowledge and that extra
Yeah.
understanding.
Mhm.
And so I chose a master's in teacher leadership
Okay.
because it creates this new area
Yeah.
where we need teacher leaders, teachers that understand how administration works,
Mhm.
but also can be advocates for the teacher themselves
Mhm.
and can speak both languages and have their
Yeah.
feet in both worlds.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be an administrator.
Yeah.
That's a totally different job, and I'm not interested in that.
Yeah.
However, I love teaching,
Yeah.
and I love teaching new teachers like the
Yeah.
ropes, and I want them to be successful.
Yeah.
I served as a department head for a while where I was in charge of the social studies department at my school, and I loved being that liaison between these are the needs of my teachers.
Yeah.
I need these needs to be met from administration.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was at a point where I was not effective as a leader because of personality differences with the administration. So a job opened up at another school.
Oh, cool.
And it was with some friends that I had made connections through summer school.
Oh, okay.
And they're like, you should consider coming over.
Yeah.
And I was kind of at a point where I knew I was no longer effective in my capacity at my old school.
Mhm.
And this was an opportunity for a change.
Yeah.
And for a break and for a reset for me to kind of reevaluate where's my career actually going at this point. So it's been a great move for me, even though a lot of people were really surprised by it because I didn't go to the district. I didn't move up. I didn't become an instructional coach. I didn't do all these other steps that were leading, it appeared that I would be going down that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for me, I was at a point where I was kind of burned out. I was seeing the reality of the educational system.
Yeah.
And I needed a minute just to reevaluate my place in teaching.
Yeah.
So this has been a great move for me. It's
That's
provided me
great.
a little reset,
some
calming down. I'm not in charge of a million things anymore. So I have time to think and reevaluate and reconnect with what it means to be a teacher. Yeah. And honestly, that's a huge piece of advice that I have for teachers, because a lot of times when you go into teaching, you think, oh, this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life. Yeah. And then you get burned out. You just do. Yeah. It's a lot. There's a lot of emotional stress. There's a lot of mental load is huge. Yeah. And so if you love teaching, if that's your true love and that's where you want to stay, I recommend a side step, go to a different content area, go to a different school, because you'll have administrators tell you, oh, it's like this anywhere. There's problems everywhere. That's not true. Yeah. Every school is very, very different depending on the administrators that are running it. They set the tone. Yes. And so if you're not really getting what you need from your school, go to a different school. Yeah. Try it out. See if maybe it's not you. Maybe it's your environment. Yeah. So.
And you answered my third question about the importance of leadership. Yeah. How would a teacher, if the teacher likes the district they're in and they want to move within that district, right? What does that look like?
That's easy-ish.
Easier.
It's easier because there is a transfer window opportunity at that'll probably open up for us probably in April,
Okay.
March, April.
Mm-hmm.
So basically what happens is the schools figure out who's going to be there next year.
Yeah.
Which teachers are going to be, and then they start posting jobs.
Okay.
And then the district is supposed to have an opportunity for people within the district to transfer schools.
Okay.
Now, once the caveat is that when you transfer to a new school or you're hired at a new school initially, you have to stay at that school for 3 years.
Oh, okay.
Unless you're getting a promotion, and then you can be released.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing that sort of holds people back from moving. It's like, well, I don't want to start over again at a new school. Because then I have that 3-year waiting period. And what if I don't like it? And what if it's worse? So they run those questions through their head,
Yeah.
which again, I don't know. I think there's wisdom in staying stable for a while.
Yeah.
But also the more people that you meet within the district,
those opportunities
present themselves.
Yeah. Very cool. I like it. I want to talk about teacher pay.
Okay, let's
go. You started off. So when I started in 2007, I think I was at like 41,000. Okay. That was my first.
Yeah.
You started at 10 or 20?
I did, but that was back in 96.
Yeah. And one of the reasons I left teaching was that pay scale, because I was 12 years in, making 50-ish thousand.
Yep.
I had the opportunity to make more money doing home inspections. And so I tried it, right?
Yeah.
My wife was like, try it. It only cost me about $3,000 to get my license. It took me about 5 months to study.
Okay.
And I had a whole new career.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm still doing that. But so yeah, let's talk about teacher pay and what because one experience I had, and I'll let you talk, was about 6 years in, the district I was at wanted to be competitive in their pay. So about 6 years in, I was now making what the new teachers make, because they're trying to attract teachers, so they raised the new teacher pay scale.
Yes.
And now, even though I'm 6 years in, I'm at the same pay level as a brand new teacher.
Right.
Which I was like, what is happening?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk to that because I have had experience teaching in different states because of the nature of myself. And because I've moved a lot, I have teacher friends in many states.
Okay.
And I follow lots of teachers on social media.
Yeah,
so I have like a good pulse on how pay is set up for teachers. I will say that it varies widely across the United States. Teacher pay does. And even the teacher pay structure varies widely among different districts across the United States. So for comparison, I'm going to compare the district that I teach in now, which Texas is a right to work state. We do not have strong unions. It is entirely the whim of the state legislature where our funding comes from, as well as the school board. So those factors are huge as far as teacher pay goes.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I was looking into a school district in California where they have strong unions. I've taught there before.
Yeah.
And their entire structure of pay is completely different.
Okay.
So in my district that I currently teach in, I came in 2014, probably one of those teachers that was making more than you at 6 years.
Wow.
Because of the new switch.
Yeah.
Now, from year to year, the pay is determined by the school board.
Yeah.
So you're determined, like you get a % raise or not each year based on a decision that the school board makes. So if I came in 2014 at 51 or 52,000. Okay. That was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was considered a new teacher.
Yeah.
And first year. And then in the last 10 years, I've gotten a master's degree.
Yeah.
And I'm making about $5,000 more a year now than I was 10 years ago.
Okay.
With a master's degree and 10 years of experience.
Wow.
It's deflating and it's defeating.
Yeah.
And that's the problem that I see in Texas with teacher pay. you start pretty well, because 10 years ago in 2014, I could have bought a house for $150,000 on my own teacher salary.
Yeah.
I had to buy a house 2 years ago, and it was $310,000.
Wow.
And I was making $5,000 more with a master's degree than I was when I started.
Yeah.
So that's the problem here.
Yeah.
Now, compare that to, the reason why I was looking into teacher salaries in California is my parents live there. And as they're getting older, I'm always have my eye on, like, if I need to move there and help them. So the district near my parents' house has a step system and a column system. So it's based on your years of experience, and it's based on your education. So if I was to go with 10 years of experience and a master's degree, I would start at $99,000.
Wow.
Now, the difference is I know exactly how much I would make next school year, and that's $102,000. And the next year would be $105,000. And the next year would be $107,000. Like, it outlines exactly how much you're paid based on your year's experience and your education. And that's the difference. Because I don't know how much I'm going to be paid in 10 years. I have no idea. But there, I would know. And a lot of districts outside of southern states have their pay scale set up that way. I will say there are a few districts in Texas that do that as well. Dallas ISD is one. And I can't remember the other one just off the top of my head. But most states that are right to work states without those strong unions are set up how it is here in Texas. So you just don't know. And it's really discouraging knowing the value that I bring to the table as an employee of the district, with my experience, with my learning, with my education, with my background. And you're not compensated for it. Because I teach next door to a friend of mine who started in 96 as well. We started the same year. She continued to teach when I did not. So she's close to retirement now. And she is also the department head for the English department. And she is bringing home maybe $100 more a month than I am.
Wow.
So I'm looking ahead thinking, okay, this is what I'm headed to. And that, so those raises that they're giving the new teachers starting at, then what they do for the other teachers that are already teaching is proportionally they end up getting smaller raises. So the jump from 40 to 50, I remember when the schools did that here, and it was like, whoa, that's so amazing. But then if you were already teaching, that's what you experienced. It's like, well, I should be getting like a $10,000 a year raise too. Like what? Because I have more experience and I know more, and I'm able to help, the leadership and all
these
of those
teachers
things.
are coming to me for help, and they're helping them.
I know, and you're doing the job of, So that's my thoughts on teacher pay, because it's not fair or equitable, and it's not. There are better ways to do it and to manage that. And again, it seems okay, because honestly, when you come in straight out of college with a bachelor's degree, starting at $54,000, it's not terrible. It's not a terrible thing, and that's pretty par for the course and average. That's a pretty average salary with a bachelor's degree. But again, it's that, where are you going to be in 10 years?
And my experience, by the time I had left, I had been teaching for 12 years, making I started at 45,000. I didn't start at 41. And I got to 51. In 12 years, I jumped maybe like $5,000-$6,000. But when I started, my wife and I was making $45,000. Because we followed Dave Ramsey, we had no debt. So we were able to afford a house, but our house cost $114,000. We bought a house on a teacher salary, one income. 12 years later, I have 4 kids, 2 dogs. We have, it's just,
Yeah.
Now it's like, okay, now $50,000 doesn't go
It doesn't go
as far as 45,000
Right.
did 12
Mhm.
years ago.
Yep.
So yeah, I would work. I worked Amazon Flex. I
Mhm.
worked Uber. I worked
Yep.
Lyft.
Yep.
I worked summer school.
Right.
My wife, as the kids got older, started doing stuff here and there, shift,
Mhm.
and
Yes.
so
Yep.
so then when I made the switch to home inspecting, they offered me out the door $65,000. Right, so I'm making 51. They're like, "We'll pay you $65,000 a year,"
Yeah.
and I was like, "I'm gonna try it."
Yeah.
And it only cost $3,000, and it
That's
took me
crazy.
5 months.
That's so crazy.
And yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
there
because
is
that's the
that.
other thing too, is that to be a teacher in my district, you have to have an additional 12 hours of professional development hours
Uh-huh.
on your own time
Oh, yes.
every
Yeah.
school year.
Yeah.
So,
I
you
remember
talk
that.
about like this extra training and stuff.
Mhm.
It's a lot of
Yeah.
demands, and it's a
Mhm.
lot of upkeep for
Yeah.
and I know it's like it's a public service and all that stuff, but I also
Yeah.
know that there's other areas of the country
Mhm.
where it's not the same issues.
Yeah.
Like they have the different issues, but
Yeah.
it's definitely there's a way to work around this.
Yes. Yeah, I definitely think that they need to fix that
Yeah.
because you are losing. I had another friend that was a great teacher,
Mhm.
and he left because he had an opportunity to make more money doing
Mhm.
something else.
Right. And a lot
And
of
and in fact, my
it's
wife
been
asked me, she when we thought about starting our own home
Mhm.
inspection company, she said, if you got paid the same, she's
Mhm.
like, would you teach or would you do home inspections? And I was like, I would teach
Oh,
in a
absolutely.
heartbeat.
Yeah.
If I could have told my principal, hey, I have an inspection company offering me,
Right.
and she said, oh, I'll match it. Like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
I'll stay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the other thing that is impacted long term with teaching, you have to keep this in consideration, is when you
Mhm.
retire.
Yes.
So retirement systems in teaching are set up similarly
Mhm.
across the United States.
Yeah.
Meaning they look at your number of years, they calculate, they calculate a percentage of how
Mhm.
much you worked based on your age. And then you get a percentage of your either top 3 highest years or
Yeah.
your last 5. Like
Mhm.
that's what's a little bit different.
Yeah.
But if I'm retiring in Texas, let's say I magically make it to $65,000 a year by the
Yeah.
time in another 15 years.
Yeah.
Make it to $65,000. My retirement is a percentage of that. So I
Mhm.
might get maybe each year I might get 60% of that
Yeah.
amount. Well, 60% of 65,000
Yeah.
is a lot less.
Yeah.
As
Like
opposed to
40,000.
like if I went to California and retired from that same teacher retirement
Mhm.
system, I end making $130,000 a year.
Yeah.
I'm still making 60% of that, but that's just a much higher
But it's double.
retirement.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
there's nothing that says that I have to stay in California after I retire,
Yeah.
but I'll have a bigger retirement to pull from.
Yeah. Then you can come to Texas.
And then I could come to Texas.
Live on a full teacher salary.
Right. I'd be making the same in retirement
Yeah.
as I did like teaching here.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing long term you have to factor into, like if deciding to become a teacher, like is this going to be worth it for you?
Yeah.
Because location, it's all location.
Yeah.
So, and again, within a district, within the state, within the country.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I was on with TRS, which is the Texas Teacher Retirement System. I was tier 3,
okay.
which means at the time that I left teaching, I was either 30. I think I was 35, and I had taught 12 years.
Okay.
On my tier, I had to reach the rule of 90.
Yeah.
I was no longer. It was the rule of 80. Now it's 90. So 9 for those that are listening is my years experience plus my age had to equal 90.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, because I would have reached that at around 51.
Okay.
If I kept teaching.
Okay.
Well, the other stipulation on my tier was I could not retire before I was 62
right.
years old.
Yes.
So I would have had to teach 10 years I would have had to reach the rule of 100 or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not really this,
The rule of
right?
Methuselah.
So they have these stipulations, right? They're like, okay, you may reach this here, but
Yes.
so when I left teaching, I would have had to waited till my mid 70s to get any retirement.
Yeah.
So I pulled it out and I invested it.
Yes.
Yeah. And then if I ever go back to teaching, I mean, it'll build up again. But yeah, I did that. So what? Speaking on retirement, what is your plan?
So I'm on tier 5, and because I started a month, like 2 months after the
you missed
date,
tier 4.
the switch. I'm like, okay, well, this is great. So I started in November of 2014, which I think the date where they made all of the changes was like, if you were teaching before August of 2014, then something completely different applies to you. And I was like, well, that's unfortunate for me. So yeah, I feel like, and then I also started when I turned 40. So I went back to teaching at 40. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to, when I started, I just had the mindset, I'm just going to teach till I die. Like, because I literally could not even wrap my brain around ever retiring. And now, I mean, I've taught for 10 years. Like I eventually will retire. If I stay in teaching, I eventually will retire. But honestly, because of that 60% payout, I feel like I've been vested. I don't see myself retiring from teaching in Texas. So either I'm going to find another career and do teaching in a different form, which is what I've actually started looking into, or I'm going to move to another state and keep teaching in another state, knowing what my pay is going to be. So, and at that point, I'll figure out. But yeah, I totally agree about pull it and invest it. Like the returns can be greater by doing that than just letting it sit there. And
because for me it would have been 40 years. Because I know my teaching experience would have locked in at 12 years, and then just instead of growing by 2, it's only growing by 1. So that's what we did, and it's been fine.
I know it works out. And then again, if you need to go back, because I mean, that was my dilemma too. Like when I left in 99, what am I going to do with my retirement? And I was dumb and pulled it out. I wish I would have just left it. But again, I was dumb. But we were also poor and desperate, and you just do what you have to do to survive. But I also let my California credential expire, and I heard all of these like, oh no, it's the end of the world. Like you're never going to get it back. But then when the time was right and I went back, I got it back. Like that you just figure out a way to do whatever you need to do to get to do the next step. If that's what you feel like you need to do. So
the what was I going to ask you? Cause I did pull out the retirement, but I have kept my license valid.
Your credential.
It's
easy in Texas.
So I can go back. I just had to pay every, I don't know if it's 5 years or something. So it was about to expire. I paid and it renewed. For some reason, I studied in college was bilingual education. And then when I tested, for some reason, it was EC through 4.
Oh, interesting.
So when I did my student teaching, they wanted to hire me for 5th grade. So then right after I studied, I went and got my 4 through 8 bilingual generalist. They ended up hiring me for 4th grade, but anyways, and then I wanted to transition to high school, and because I went to a magnet program in high school, and I was like, oh, it'd be cool to teach there. So I got my 6 through 12 technology certification. For some reason, when I renewed, that one expired. Do you know anything about that?
So it was the second one was
it was 6 through 12 technology certification.
Did you have to take
it? It was just a test.
It was just a test.
It was just a test. And I remember going to Barnes and Noble, and there was a study test.
Yeah, there's like,
and I just flipped through it for like a couple hours. on
And
a
then,
Friday,
yeah.
and then Saturday I took the test. I'm a really good test taker.
Me too.
And so my wife was like, I hate you, because
I know.
she hates tests. Yeah, literally I just was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then I passed it, and then
So there's not
I
like,
never used it.
yeah.
But yeah,
That
when I
really is
renewed,
surprising
when I
because,
renewed it, for some reason when you go to my on the
yeah.
SPEC website, it says expired or whatever, and I'm like, this is weird.
Was there like a box that you had to check to renew that? No,
I don't know.
because I've got all of these crazy generalists and all these things, and then I got GT certified, and then I got
that one doesn't show up on mine either. I got GC certified.
Because the last time I renewed, all of them renewed at the same time because I actually wanted to drop my.
Well, when I was teaching it all
generalists,
they were all like they would renew when I would renew, and then when I was the last time I renewed, not being a teacher.
I wonder if that's why if you're not currently employed,
the other ones I guess dropped off. Because you don't see.
Interesting.
GT, you don't see my my 6 through 12 technology.
Yeah, that might be it. So somebody smarter than me probably knows that answer.
Yeah. I'll ask my next guest. No.
Yeah.
So what would you tell your kids? Like if your kid is like, hey, I want to be a teacher. What would you
I would say get in the classroom as much as possible.
Okay.
And decide then. Because some people really just know. They just know and they're born to teach and they do it. But I remember when I was in college so I spent my first year at a community college, and my youngest brother was in first grade. Okay. And so I actually went to his first grade classroom. Wow. And I volunteered in his classroom just to kind of get a feel and talk to his teacher about what it was like being a teacher. So any type of experience that you can get in the classroom beforehand, I 1,000% recommend, because a lot of times people think they know what teaching is. Yeah. And then they get into teaching and it's not what they expected. Yeah. And so anytime, again, I don't, depends on your college program. That was the one thing that I appreciate about where I went to school when I went to college, is because they did put you in the classroom right away. Good. Yeah. So if you decide as a junior, like it's easier to make that course correction as a junior than it is if you've already gone through and maybe it's your 5th year and you're like, but I have this degree in like general studies, and so that I could be a teacher, and now I'm in the classroom and I don't want to be a teacher because it's too much. That's
what my experience was. I didn't get into the classroom until my second to last semester.
Oh yeah. That's too late.
It was called what's called approaches. So my first, as a senior in college, I took what's called approaches. So I would go 2 or 3 times a week. I would go to school, and 2 or 3 times a week I would be in the classroom.
Yes. Yeah.
And then my last, I'm going to graduate in May. That January, it's like, okay, now you're student teaching. Now you're in the classroom. Yeah. And I'm like, well, too late.
It's too late. Yeah, I know a lot of people feel that. Yeah. And so try to get into a classroom, even if it's just volunteering. Talk to teachers about what it's actually like before you get too involved in your college education.
Well, this is another reason I started the channel. And I want to ask you this question. Yeah. Because I know in elementary, one of the reasons I would never do middle school is because of classroom management. Okay. And because of phones. Yeah. Right? Like in elementary, they don't have a phone. Or when I taught.
Theoretically.
When I taught, they didn't have a phone. And actually, my last couple of years, they started, it started trickling down.
They have one right now.
They didn't have a phone. And then I just had to raise my voice a little bit. Right. I could get their attention. Yeah. Right. They're like scared of me. Yes. But then you go to middle school and I'm not threatening. Like some of these middle school kids are taller, stronger than me. Like I would not be, and so can you talk about the classroom management, the distractions, Well,
I appreciate you saying that, because even within my own career, when I first started, I felt the same way. Yeah. Like I knew I couldn't do middle or high school when I first started, but I was 21 when I graduated. My first year of teaching, I actually started that year at age 20. Wow. No, 20. I was 21. Yeah. And turned 22 my first year. That's so young. You feel so close to that. Like, But I will say that as I've gotten older and my own personality has changed, and I've had my own kids, that's another big factor too,
Yeah.
is that you learn kind of what you're comfortable with and what you are good at
Yeah.
as far as classroom management.
Yeah.
And every single teacher has a different style.
Yeah.
Like they have books and stuff you can get, which is, I think it's good to learn as many different types of management techniques as you can.
Yeah.
Also, a lot of classroom management is just systems. What do the kids expect from you? And you're the one that has to figure that out. And you're the one that sets that tone.
Yeah.
So coming to understand, like, this is what I expect and this is what I can tolerate and what I can't tolerate. You talked about cooperative learning earlier. There's different types of teaching that lend themselves to different tolerance levels that drain you.
Yeah.
And so part of teaching is figuring out that for yourself. Now, the differences between elementary and middle and high school, it's really different.
Yeah.
But I feel like you, with experience, and again, if you're subbing like before you get into the classroom, so you have an idea of the differences in the kids and their developmental levels, I feel like half of classroom management is just the rapport is the standard that you set yourself with the kids and how approachable you are and how you're not their friend, you're not their buddy.
Yeah.
But if they feel safe, if they have a predictable environment, if they have a routine that they know every day that they can depend on and expect, then that's half of classroom management right there.
Yeah.
The other half really is, because I've taught in lots of different types of schools. I've taught in Title I schools. I've taught in just neighborhoods, like regular middle class schools. I've taught in very wealthy schools. And really, the kids are impacted by their environment at home. And that bleeds into the classroom. So understanding and being aware of that. My classroom management looks very different at my current school, which is right now I'm teaching at a very wealthy school. My classroom management in a lot of ways looks different than when I was teaching in a Title I school. Because again, the needs of the kids are different. A lot of these kids come in and they're ready to learn and they have all this amazing life experience. They've been to different countries, they've traveled, they have private tutors, they're in sports, their life is very busy, very full, very structured, very organized. And so it's very easy for me to just create a very organized structure that they just are comfortable in. But then in Title I schools that I've taught in, they're not used to structure. They're not used to routines. It feels uncomfortable to them because when they go home, there is no structure. There is no order. There's no, it's harder. So you have to teach them and train them. And it takes longer for them to settle down and understand that this is part of, this is going to help you in the long run. Because they don't know that. They don't understand that yet. So again, it's just,
I found it interesting that kids think that with less structure equals more fun. They think that. But then in like whenever I was like finishing the year and it'd be like the second to last day and it's not the party yet, but we're really done. And it's like there was like I would come, because students would come to me and they're like, I'm bored, like,
I know,
and I'm like, well, I don't know, right? And so, but during the school year when it's like, hey, do this, and we have this assignment, and we have these group things, and they love school, right? They would even tell me like, oh, I don't want to go on Christmas break because I'm gonna,
I know,
and it's funny because they think like, oh, less rules and more fun, and it's like, no, really, like it's less fun.
It is.
Because even in society, if people could do whatever they wanted, like you'd have people doing terrible things, right?
Right.
But with that structure and with these guardrails of laws and it's good. It protects everyone,
right?
Because now everyone can have fun and everyone can be safe, and that's the goal.
That's the goal.
I was gonna ask you about advice that I used to give, and then how you would kind of with new teachers, I would tell them I would tell them two things. The same thing, right? Like establish the culture from the beginning,
Right.
like set the expectations, right?
Yes.
So something I would do was, okay, like I would teach them every little thing.
Everything.
Like
Yes.
if you put a pencil in the wrong place, like time
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. Let's
Like
try
where
again.
does this go? You know, if you
Right.
don't, you know, like this is where we turn things in. This is where, right?
Yes.
Like every little detail was like um blown out of proportion the
Yes.
first 2 weeks of school.
Oh,
If you do
absolutely.
something that is doesn't meet my expectation, like we're gonna
We're
stop
gonna
and we're
stop.
all gonna address this. Okay. The second thing I would tell the teachers is to start off. Um, I use the word strict,
Okay.
but um, what I mean by that is like the expectation has to be met
Yes.
every time,
Every time.
right? Like
Yeah.
this is the expectation.
Yes.
And it's just, and I would use the word strict, like you've got to be strict, like initially.
Yes.
And then as the year goes by, like, you know, that's
Right.
when the grace steps in and it's
Yes.
like, okay, you know, something's happening at home or
Right.
whatever, right? Whatever. There's more understanding as the year goes by. But
Correct.
at the beginning, it's just,
Yeah.
what would you
And
tell a new teacher?
I absolutely agree with that. Teaching middle school and teaching sixth grade in middle school, for
Yeah.
me, it's not the first 2 weeks, it's the first 9 weeks. So
Oh,
the first
wow.
grading period, because
Okay.
again, everything is new for
Yeah.
these kids.
Yeah.
They're coming from elementary into middle.
Mm-hmm.
So like when I was teaching 7th and 8th grade,
Yeah.
it wasn't the whole 9 weeks. It was probably half that time.
Yeah.
But when you're in those transition years, so it would be like kindergarten and first grade.
Yeah.
And then when you transition to the upper grades, like 4th grade, you're going to have an adjustment, and then 6th grade and then 9th grade.
Yeah.
You have to take that whole first 9 weeks. And you're right. You have to be strict or rigid in your expectations.
Rigid. I like that word.
You know, you just have to be very, and honestly, that's my least favorite time of year in a lot of ways, because I'm so tired.
Yeah.
Because I have to be on all the time, and you have to be rigid all the time. But the kids, I mean, even my hardest schools that I've worked with and the hardest years that I've had, eventually they settle down and they get it, as long as you're consistent.
Yeah.
And that's that consistency. That's the most important part.
Yeah.
With the kids. So if you decide, okay, I'm going to do this, then you've got to commit to that. And you've got to, like, if you want us to turn in fact, my turn-in system is so simple.
Yeah.
It's like all the work goes in this box. And at the end of the week, then I will touch the work, but it only goes here. And I put it, it's like, it's very, very, my systems are very rigid in that regard. But again, that's what helps the kids feel safe and secure, is that consistency.
Yeah.
And that they knew at the beginning, this is what it was. And it still is in January. Like it's really, in fact, I had a student teacher once tell me, like, they wish that they could do student teaching for both semesters, because they came in like in January.
Yeah.
And so by that
like,
point,
how did you establish this culture?
Everything was already established. I love January. That's my favorite month of the year is January.
Okay.
And they said, well, how did you? And I said, well, you have to be here to experience it, because again, it looks very different in August than it does in January. But everything you do in August and September sets you up for a good January.
I like the word rigid. Because I think some people see the word or hear the word strict. I don't know why they think like yelling, and they think mean.
They do think
and
mean.
They think like there's no, there's no freedom. It's like, I'm the teacher and I'm the boss and I'm a dictator, right? And to me, when I say strict, I mean rigid. I mean like, this is the expectation and you're going to meet it because I expect you to.
Right.
And because it's good for you, not because like,
it's easy.
Not because I'm the boss, and if you don't do this, it doesn't please me.
Right.
It's not that.
It's not about me.
It's so that you did work. You should get credit for that work. So I'm going to expect you to write your name, write the date, put it in this box, right? And so that's how you get credit.
Yes, exactly.
And so everything is to help the student learn and be successful.
Yes.
And so, I used to get mad when people would tell me I wasn't strict.
I did
when I was
too.
a young teacher.
Yeah.
Because my classroom was loud. And
Yeah.
some of the students would pass by and they were, to them, it looked like fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I was
Yeah.
like, learning should be fun.
Learning should be
One,
fun.
I'm like, but two, like we're getting everything done.
Mm-hmm.
And if someone's off task, I would tell the kids, they were in elementary, I'll tell them you can work now or you can work during recess or
Right.
you can take it home for homework.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
you pick.
You pick.
Like, you know, if you want to have your recess right now during writing,
Mm-hmm.
that's fine.
Yeah.
But
just know
during
that,
recess, you're going to be writing because you already had your recess time.
Yeah. I used to say the same thing in elementary.
Yeah. The illusion of choice. That's also
That's
parent.
right.
That's also good for parenting.
It really is.
Whenever my daughters were younger and started wanting to dress how she wanted to dress,
Oh, yeah.
I would tell my wife, I was like, pick 2 things that you're okay with her wearing.
Right.
And then tell her
The illusion
to
of
pick.
choice.
And then she's like, I want this one. And then,
Yeah.
she's like, I get to pick.
I get
But
to
really,
pick.
I'm okay with,
Right.
these are what I'm okay
Yes.
with. That's funny.
Yeah.
Man, you brought up something that I wanted to ask you. I need to start writing these questions down whenever. Oh, have you ever confronted or been in a situation with a really tough student that just, either doesn't want to do what you're asking them to do or is just, having a bad day or
Oh, yeah.
what does that look
'cause
like?
we're human. So one thing I learned over time is that you cannot reach every student.
Yeah.
And that's a hard lesson for someone like me that's very optimistic and very wants to save the world. Especially when I was younger, I had all these great grand delusions. And I'm going to go and I'm going to save all the kids. And I learned very quickly that number one, I can't save them all.
Yeah.
And so I've also learned that a lot of times the outward behavior of a child is just a reflection of something that's not you. Like as the adult, it's not a reflection of you. It's a reflection of what's going on in that child's world.
Okay.
And so learning as a teacher, one of the skills that you absolutely need is the ability to discern, is this an ongoing behavioral issue just because it's a behavioral issue, or is it something deeper is going on?
Yeah.
And so I really try to be objective and curious and approach the kids with curiosity.
Yeah.
As opposed to it's my way or the highway and you have to do it.
Yeah.
So I remember being asked this question before my internship, my very first year of teaching, by a principal. If you have a child that's refusing to write their spelling words, 5 times a week or whatever your requirement is, how do you handle that? And for me, it's always been this way. I need to find out what's going on behind that.
Yeah.
So, and that doesn't have to take a lot of time. You don't have to psychoanalyze the child and spend hours and hours trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
It's just a really quick question of, hey, how you feeling today?
Yeah.
What else is going on? Do you need a minute?
Yeah.
And depending on the age of the child is going to determine how I approach it. Because you're not going to ask a 5-year-old, do you want to go take a walk around the block and cool off for a minute? I would never ask a 5-year-old child that. Yeah. But I would say, hey, why don't we move over here to this corner of the room and just have a cool down break, and then I'm going to get back to you.
Yeah.
The bottom line is they still need to do the work.
Yeah.
They still need to do it
because
they need to understand that this is going to help them learn and grow and be a better person. But in the moment, they may not be physically capable of doing it. Yeah. And so as a teacher, having that discernment of, is this something that I can, put a little pause on and until they can get themselves together? Is this something that they just need to put their head down for a minute and I may have to come back to this in a week?
Yeah.
Is this something that, there's just, it's just individual. It's very, very individualistic.
Yeah.
And so there's been some kids, and I will say that I have taught kids that have gone on to and are now in jail and are now have committed very significant crimes.
Yeah.
And as a middle schooler, I knew that was going to be their path.
Yeah.
And so then at that point, like when it's extreme like that,
Yeah.
it's okay, now it's just survival, because you have other students in your classroom that you have to account for. Like they need to feel safe.
Yeah.
And so then it's, how do we set up a program so that it's beneficial for both of us? My expectation for that child might be a lot lower than everyone else sitting in that room.
Yeah.
But I try to create an environment where even in that situation, we minimize the
collateral damage.
The collateral damage.
Yeah, that's tough.
It's tough.
That's the tough side of teaching.
That's the tough side of teaching. And that's the part that is the mental and emotional draining, is that constant. When you've got 30 personalities sitting in your classroom and they're all prepubescent and their hormones are all firing at different levels. And I've taught in schools that are very explosive, where they go from 0 to 60 in a half a second.
Yeah.
And they haven't been modeled or taught good emotional regulation skills.
Yeah.
You then have to become the emotional regulator.
Yeah.
And so trying to help them, that's one of the things they don't really talk about in teacher prep programs is how to help kids regulate their own emotions.
Yeah.
Because if you can figure out how to do that, that's really going to help your classroom management. It's going to help the kids that's one of those life skills that they need to learn. And that they can learn through school if they have the right teacher. Yeah. But again, but also you can't save every kid.
Yeah.
You just can't.
Yeah. I had that experience with a 4th grader who came from a very rough family condition. Dad's not in the picture. Right. It's just mom, but she's always working. Brother's in jail. Older sister's teen pregnant, dropped out of school.
Right.
So she's seeing all this at home.
Right.
Comes to my classroom and just does not care.
No.
Does not care. In fact, she would come in and they were allowed to bring snacks for lunch. They weren't supposed to eat in the classroom, but they could bring. She would, every single day, she'd bring a bag of hot Cheetos. Of
course.
Every single day. And by the time she got to my classroom, she's almost done with them. So that's basically her breakfast.
Yeah.
And so I would tell her, I'm not going to say her name. I remember her name. Yeah. I was like, hey, put the chips in your bag or in your desk and you could take them to lunch. And literally every day she would just and right in the door, finish the bag, and then she would throw it away. And then she would go. And I was like, okay, if that's what you choose to do. But you're not going to eat in my classroom, right? You're not going to eat during work. This is the expectation. And I went through all the emotions. I went through that was the first time in my career I had a student that I was like, I'm not going to be able to reach this student. No. And I tried everything, right? I tried to be encouraging, tried to be, positive. I tried to be strict, and I tried to be like, I'm the boss, all right? I just, everything. Nothing worked. And I don't know whatever happened to her, but it was a very tough year. Yeah. Because at the same time, I have 20 other students. Right. And it's like, we need to learn. Yeah. And she's standing up and talking and sharpening her pencil every 2 minutes and to this. And then she's like, my pencil's too small. So I got another pencil. It was just everything you can think then I'm trying like, okay, should I ignore her? Should I get after her? Should I send her to the principal? Yeah. I can't send her to the principal every single day by 8:30 in the morning.
Absolutely.
So it's like, man, it was tough. It is. It was tough. It is. I survived. The good thing about teaching is you have them 8 months.
Exactly. And it seems so long. It seems so long, especially my first few years. I just felt like it's just going to go on forever. Like it's never going to end. Yeah. But it does. Yeah. It absolutely does. Yeah. And so I think that's where I learned the value of you have to try to establish with those really hard kids to love. You have to understand your own emotional limits and your own ability, because again, because I was going to work teaching a lot of kids like that, because I was working in a Title I school, and then I'd come home and I had my own kids at home, and you still got to have something left in your tank at the end of the day for their needs, and it's just hard. Yeah, but the school year does end eventually.
Yeah, yeah.
It does
And
end.
then there are some times where you do have a tough kid and they do end up listening and
They
do.
do. I
Yeah.
know.
Do you have you kept in touch with any students
I have a
across the
few.
years?
I have a few,
Yeah.
and I because I lived in the same attendance district or
Yeah.
attendance zone as where I taught.
Yeah.
A lot of like I'd go to the store and I'd see students all the time,
Yeah.
and they'd
That's
be
cool.
yelling across the parking lot,
Yeah.
which
That's
is
cool.
good and not good.
Yeah.
But I have kept up with several students, and it's
That's
really
cool.
cool to see them.
Yeah.
If you run into HEB and they're like working
Yeah.
as a manager or whatever,
Yeah.
and then they're going to school and what they,
Yeah.
it's really cool to catch up with.
What are
students
your,
through
because
time.
at my first students,
Mhm.
they were in 4th grade back in 2007, 8.
Mhm.
So now they're in like their mid-20s.
Yeah,
Right? So that's my oldest.
Yeah, my first students are
What are
in their,
yours?
oh gosh, in their late 30s.
Oh, wow.
Because, yeah, my first students are in their late 30s, maybe turning 40.
Wow.
And honestly, that first batch, because again, I've got these like 2 teaching experiences.
Yeah.
So like my first batch, my first year was in Utah,
Mm-hmm.
and I taught in I taught 4th grade in just very middle class,
Okay.
very regular, but we had 2 PTAs. Because all the parents were super involved.
Oh,
so there was no money
wow.
in the schools.
Yeah.
But the PTAs were huge.
Wow,
and I
cool.
had parents all volunteering.
Yeah.
It was awesome. It was a great first year experience. And then I moved to California and I taught in a Title I school in San Bernardino.
Mhm.
And San Bernardino, California has a higher murder rate than like in the whole United States.
Wow.
And I actually, my first year as a 3rd grade teacher, one of my students died in a drive-by shooting.
Wow.
My second year, I followed that group up to 4th grade.
Yeah.
And I had another student that came in at the beginning of the year who ended up passing away from complications of AIDS.
Wow.
So it's a whole, and then that year I had, 40 kids move in.
40.
Yeah. So I started the year with 34 kids and I ended the year with 34 kids. But I had 40 slips of new kids like in and out. So highly transient.
Yeah.
Highly like volatile.
Yeah,
like it was in the middle of gang territory. Like it was a whole different experience.
Yeah.
And so those kids, I don't know what happens to them.
Yeah.
Like I literally have no idea.
Yeah.
A few kids in Utah, I've like run into people that I know from Utah that know the families. And so like, I think they're fine. But honestly, in my first 3 years of teaching, like I really have no idea what happened to any of those students.
Wow. Have you seen the movie Detachment?
No.
You need to watch that movie.
Okay.
It's a good movie. It's a tough movie to watch because the kids are in high school.
Okay.
And it's just a tough group of kids. But it's this substitute teacher that is just, he cares. Like he cares. But he also has some things going on in his personal life. And but he wants to help and he wants to make a difference. Yeah. And you got to watch that movie.
I feel that.
It's a good movie.
I'll have to look it up.
In fact, I watched it and I was like, man, I want to go back to teaching.
Yeah.
That's the thing that's the other side of teaching that, sometimes you may not feel appreciated by the pay and the leadership, right? But the difference that you make, I don't think, you
can't measure that.
You can't measure that and
No.
you can't. So like now I'm doing home inspections and I love it. I love what I do and I love the service that I offer but it's not the same. You don't create the same relationships. No. You don't have that. So like I have students that keep up with me. I have a student now that has his own restaurant.
Oh, wow.
And I went and ate there.
Wow.
It was beautiful. Cool. It's really good.
That's really cool.
Tu Asador, if you want to go to San Antonio. They have 2 restaurants now.
Okay.
And he was my first student to get 100 in the math star. Yeah, like he didn't miss any questions. So I'm thinking, oh, this kid's gonna be an engineer, like
Yeah.
And now he has a restaurant.
Interesting.
I had another student that from that same class and it's funny because I don't even remember. I feel bad. I don't even remember, but for her birthday, my wife and I gave her a drawing pad with like
Yeah,
markers
yeah,
and
yeah.
pencils and all that stuff.
Right.
She ended up becoming an architect. And
No way.
she wrote me when she graduated.
Yeah.
She wrote me this long message on
Yeah.
social media because that's how some of my students have found me. About how that present was just so like life changing.
Yes.
And I was like, and I don't even remember that
Yeah,
moment.
and that's the thing is that that reminded me of I was at Chick-fil-A at the drive-thru,
Yeah.
and I noticed like one of my former students working in the drive-thru, and I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, hey, I haven't seen you for like
Yeah.
7 or 8 years." And I said, "What are you doing?" She's like, "I'm in college.
Yeah.
I'm working on my master's in history."
Awesome.
And I was like, "No way," because I taught her in history class as a 7th grader.
Yeah.
She's like, "I hated history, and then I got into your class, and now I'm getting my master's in it." And I was
awesome.
like, "What?"
That is so cool.
She was she was kind of a stinker. She was one of those stinker
Yeah,
kids that
yeah.
like seemed like she didn't care and
Yeah.
like whatever.
Yeah.
And like, this is too good. And I know she didn't pass my class like the first 9 weeks. So
Yeah.
it's just like one of those
Yeah.
full circle moments where, you just don't know.
Yeah.
You just don't know the impact that you make.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
but it is one of the good parts, the big perks about teaching.
Oh, I know. I do miss that about teaching is the stories,
Yes.
the relationships,
Yeah.
the impact.
Yeah.
It's just, oh man.
It's all good.
So that is one of those lines of work there. If you want to make a difference, like
Yeah.
go into teaching.
Go into teaching. Yeah.
You know, as many bad days as you'll have, you know,
There'll be
the good moments and the good. And those are the things, you know, I think you remember.
Mm-hmm.
What else? We talked about retirement. We talked
Mhm.
about teaching.
Yeah.
Typical days. I don't know. Do you want to?
Yeah.
Is there any advice that you want to close with to teachers that are new to the profession, as far as middle school?
Right.
That
Middle
you can,
school specific. It's
Yeah.
hard. It's
Yeah.
just really hard.
Yeah.
It's hard emotionally. It'll tax you mentally, emotionally, and physically,
Yeah.
and sometimes spiritually,
Mhm.
beyond what you can even comprehend before you go into it.
Yeah.
However, it's possible to succeed and to have a good work-life balance
Yeah.
in teaching.
Mhm.
But it takes a lot of work to get to that point. And you have to be very intentional about where your own personal emotional boundaries are
Yeah.
and your physical boundaries are. And to be aware that, your life is not your classroom, even though the first few years, it really does feel like it.
Yeah.
It really feels like your whole world revolves around your classroom because, again, there's so many moving pieces and so many moving parts to teaching that you have to kind of figure out for yourself how you're going to manage all of that.
Yeah.
And so be patient with yourself, give yourself grace,
Yeah.
but go through the process and do the work that's necessary to become a better teacher. Because honestly, teaching is half skills.
Mhm.
Like teaching is just a series of skills, like how to teach, how to manage, how the routines.
Mhm.
And then the other half is the personal part.
Yeah.
And that's the relationship building and the identifying like how do I want to impact these kids today? And how is my mood going to affect them today? And how do I allow them to be them without it affecting me and pulling me down?
Yeah.
So
I like that.
So,
Is there, I thought of a question while you were talking. Is there something that you came across in teaching that you didn't learn in school? I'm going to give you an example. So when I got moved to kinder, I was like, I don't know how to teach someone how to read.
Right.
Because I didn't learn that I took a children's literacy class.
The children's, but the methods of teaching
it wasn't
reading,
really,
but no.
Like, I was like, how am I going to teach these kids how to read? Yeah. So I learned it, I learned about the phonological continuum and I learned about just everything. But yeah, like I had this moment of like, why didn't they teach me how to teach someone how to read, especially if I'm going into elementary?
So,
is there a moment you had like that?
Oh, for sure. Like there were so many. In fact, my first year teaching, my mentor teacher, she and I would joke like almost every day, we need to write a book, what they don't teach you in college. So I've been thinking about this book idea for, I don't know, 27 years. Like I just.
Well, you can use that example.
I will use that example. I think for me, the biggest realization that I did not get taught anything in college was the assessment piece.
Okay.
So I was elementary education. I actually took a reading methods class, like how to teach reading.
Okay.
And I felt like I had a pretty good handle on that.
Yeah.
But they never taught us, like, how do I know they learned it?
Yeah.
I remember asking myself that question so many times. How do I know the kids learned it?
Yeah.
Because again, it goes back to that. I'm like, I'm taking a grade.
Yeah.
But what does an 88 mean? Like, what is a 72? Like, do they learn it?
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until the end of my first year when the kids started talking about stuff we were talking about at the beginning of the year that I was like, they learned it. They got it. So excited. And then my next district, they did do they were heavy into assessment. And I know now, like, it's all about the data and all about the assessment stuff. Yeah. But I still ask myself that question, even knowing how to assess kids and knowing what to do with data. I still ask myself that question, how do I know if they really learned it? Yeah. And so, that's a good question. They don't know how to teach that yet. No, they really don't. They say they do, but they really don't.
Yeah. Well, even in my life, I when I started my business, a lot of people would talk about metrics. Like, what are your metrics? What are your metrics? Okay. And I'm like, man, I need to do this in my personal life. Right? Like, we think like, I've been trying to eat healthier. Yeah. I'm like, if I really tracked my eating, like, I'd really know. Am I eating healthy? Right. But I don't track it. I don't track my eating. I don't track my sleep. I don't track
There's
my
an app for that.
Oh, there is. Oh, you got to tell me about that.
I'll tell you about the app.
Yeah. But no, it's good. Like you said, right? It's good to track and to know, are you really making, I saw a quote about New Year's, right? It's like, you can have all these goals, but if you live the same life you lived in 2024, like, you're going to get the same results in 2025. Exactly. And part of that is tracking, like, what am I doing?
What am I actually doing?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so that's interesting. Are they really, how do I know that they learned it?
How do I really know? Because I mean, you can get a good grade because you've got good short-term memory.
Yeah. I'm a good test taker.
Right.
I literally got my certification in teaching technology classes on studying for 2-3 hours. I just flipped through the book.
That was my
GT certification. But like you said, a lot of the learning happens, like your program that they put you in the classroom, and that's how a lot of these jobs. Have you seen that joke where this guy's interviewing, and he's like, what do they ask him? And he's like, oh, the interviewer tells him, he's like, forget everything you learned in college. Like, you're not going to need it here. Yeah. And he's like, oh, well, that's good because I didn't go to college. And then the interviewer is like, oh, well, then you're not qualified to work here. And it's that like, tracks. What?
That tracks.
Yeah.
That tracks.
And I've learned that in a lot of the careers. My brother's an engineer, and he told me that. He's like, yeah you learn engineering, you learn all the theory.
Yes.
But then really it's
the real life application.
Once you're at work, they teach you. I met another guy that's a programmer, computer science major. Yeah. He learned 1 or 2 languages in school. Yeah. The company he works for now, he uses 5 languages, and none of them are what he learned in school.
Oh, wow.
But he learned how to learn.
You learn how to learn. And that's the point of school, is you learn how to learn. Yeah. Because honestly, I mean, I taught 7th grade history in Texas. It's Texas history. Nobody remembers anything from that. And then I taught 8th grade history, which is U.S. history. And there's so much the kids have to know. Yeah. There's no humanly way possible for most normal kids to like remember that past the test. Yeah, yeah. It's just too much. Yes. And so I approach teaching with, these kids are going to remember nothing. Yeah. That's just my mind frame going in there. But what do I need them, what do they need to learn so that they can learn a new way of learning? Yes.
Yeah.
And how can I give them an experience then that they can build on from that experience itself
Yeah.
that will help them later down
Yeah.
the line.
Yeah.
And so half of my teaching is I'm not worried about the content per se.
Yeah.
It's just, this is a new way of learning something. We're gonna do this. And so I'm a huge proponent of like multisensory learning, of like, let's even getting up, doing gallery walks, or being exposed to, we read the novel Tuck Everlasting recently, but I do this whole lesson beforehand about what life is like in the 1800s. And so when they're talking about going down the road, I want the kids to know that this is a dirt road we're talking about, not the road that's out there that's asphalt paved.
Yeah.
And that when we're talking about like it's nature and out in, do they have experiences out in the woods, and what does it feel like, and what does it sound like, and what is it? Because it's not necessarily the book itself. Yeah. But again, it's learning to tap into different ways of learning that then they will use throughout their life, not just to know the
because
vocabulary.
that's the other thing that teachers are expected to manage is the different learning styles. Yeah. Because it is. It's funny, my daughter and one time came home. So we go to the dentist and I have this book that someone recommended me. It's about sleep, right?
Oh, okay.
And it was a little book. I checked it off in the library. We go to my daughter's dentist appointment. It was maybe 30, 45 minutes. Okay. And I finished the book. Right. So then we come home. My daughter's like, man, Dad reads fast. He read a whole book while I was at the dentist. And she was like, no, he didn't. Like, he didn't read the whole book.
He didn't read the whole book.
And I don't read books cover to cover. No. Because I jump around. Right. I read, I won't finish an entire book. Right. But that's how I consume information. I just want to like, what's the
main points?
Yeah. Like, just tell me the main points. And I don't want any other fluff. No. And my wife's different. My wife wants like everything. She wants all of it. She's like, oh, that's interesting. And that's interesting. Yeah. So she reads start to finish. She reads. Yeah. And so even imagine me and her being in the same classroom.
Oh yeah.
And I'm just like,
because I see you
just get to the point
every day.
Yeah. I'm like, get to the point. And then my wife's like, no, like take your time, and having to manage that. Yes. And so, all right, 2 more questions and we'll be done. Okay. I don't prepare my guests for these questions because I just want
let it flow.
Honest answers. Right now, how would you define success?
Success in my career or just success in general?
Success. Like what would you deem as successful? To you? Like success is.
That's a really good question. I would say success is feeling satisfied with your accomplishments.
Like that.
So feeling satisfied with yourself, with the accomplishments that you've done.
I like that. Very cool. The next question is, growing up, what was told to you as far as work and career and like, you're going to be an adult. Like what was told to you?
So I grew up in a household that education was very important and highly valued. Okay. My mom got married very young and did not have the opportunity to go to college until I went to college. So we actually went to college together.
Really?
That was really cool.
That's cool.
But all growing up, intelligence and learning was highly, highly valued within my home. Okay. And I can't even say it was explicitly taught. It was just assumed that you were going to college. Okay. Like it was just an assumption that was made. Yeah. And we were, I feel like I was really blessed in that there was always books available at my house. Yeah. There was music of all different kinds available. Yeah. We were told to go outside and play a lot and explore the world, like explore your circumstances around you. Yeah. There were stories that were told constantly. Reading was a really big part of my growing up too. Okay. My mom read to us all the time. Yeah. In addition to, we heard stories from when she was a kid and when my dad was a kid. So it was very literacy driven. Okay. Art was really important. So I think going back to your question, what was taught to me was just the value of education. Okay. And not I mean, college obviously was something that we were just expected to do. And all of my siblings, we all ended up with college degrees.
Yeah.
But it was also how it was approached. It was very natural and very normal and very positive experience.
Okay. Yeah.
And so, my mom was very, very cognizant and very mindful of creating opportunities for us to learn and grow. We would go to the library every week and and it wasn't like heavy money involved, but she would make sure we would go on road trips, or we would be around people that valued education as well.
Yeah.
So, so I think that's probably been my biggest, not that it was taught explicitly, but that it was just a part of our growing up.
And then with your kids, what message are you now, because they have, they can go to college, they can start a company, they can go to trade school. What is the message now?
Now the message is, what are you good at? What are your strengths? And what brings you joy?
Yeah.
And focusing on that. And so, and teaching them to, I mean, obviously we have lots of books in our house, and music and travel and art are all big parts of my own kids growing up.
Yeah.
But also helping them realize, you have it within you to discover something great.
Yeah.
And we got to figure that out.
Yeah.
And all of this stuff is just figuring out what it is that you are great at.
Cool. I like that. We're a lot alike. So I also grew up with 5. I'm the youngest of 5.
Okay.
What order were you?
I'm the oldest of 5.
You're the oldest of 5. Okay. I love the old. My oldest brother, he was like the greatest older brother you could have. And I'm the youngest of 5. And in fact, I'm going to tell you a story. You might appreciate this because you're the oldest. I wanted to be everything my older brother wanted, like just copy him in every way.
Yeah.
In fact, one time I had a dream that I asked him if I could use his toothbrush, and he said yes. Right? I don't know that this is a dream, but I'm telling, hey, can I use your toothbrush? He's like, sure. So I don't know. I wake up. I thought that was a real conversation.
Right.
I go to the bathroom and I'm brushing my teeth with his toothbrush. He comes in and he's like looking for his toothbrush. And he's like, where's my toothbrush? And I'm like, I have it. And he's like, why do you have my toothbrush? That's gross. He's just freaks out. And I'm like, you said I could use it. It destroyed me. But that's how much I wanted to be like him.
Right. That's
fantastic. So the other thing we have in common is we both have 4 kids.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And then we tell our kids the same thing, right? Like you're strong at something.
Yeah.
Right? You can't be good at everything.
No.
Find what you're good at.
Yeah.
And find what you love doing and do that. Like that is your contribution.
Right.
Because my daughter is in 8th grade going to 9th grade. She had to declare
all the
kind of her
things,
track thing. And so this channel kind of was really created through that.
Yeah.
Because she was asking questions. I'm like, I don't know
what these things
and
are.
so I was able to interview someone that does what she wants to do.
Oh, that's great.
It was really cool.
That's really cool.
And she was able to talk to him and ask questions.
Yeah.
And this guy loved what he did.
Wow.
And so, just that message, right? Like with my daughter who's not strong at math, it's like, okay, like just, try your best.
Yeah.
If your best is a 75, like, all right, you tried your best. And then one day you'll,
Yeah. And don't go into engineering.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, like find something you're good at.
Something that you're good at.
It may not involve math.
And is easier for you.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to pursue something just because it's hard.
Yes.
Like that's a really good life lesson too. Because I would do stuff just because it was hard. Like I've got to prove to myself that I can do this.
Oh, okay.
And overcome this hardness.
Yeah, yeah.
And then finally my mom was like, why?
Yeah.
You don't have
just
to.
Unnecessarily
Why don't you just focus on like what you already are good? And that's actually why I went back into teaching.
Oh, okay.
Because I was doing all these other things.
Yeah.
And I was like, why am I relearning new things and new careers? And why don't I just do what I'm good at?
Yeah.
And that's easy for me.
Yeah.
And so that's why I actually ultimately.
And even though those
returned to
things
the
come
classroom.
easy, there's still work involved.
There's
And
still a
it's
lot of work involved. Yeah,
It's a different hard.
it is.
Yeah.
It is definitely a different hard.
And so, man, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, I enjoyed our
Well,
conversation.
thank you.
And thank you so
really
much
appreciate you
for
asking me.
coming and sharing your expertise and your perspective.
Yeah.
Because even though, I mean, my hope is to just continue to interview,
Right.
even like teachers, right? Like elementary and just
there's so many different perspectives from teachers.
Yeah. And I think we can learn from all of it.
Absolutely.
And so appreciate
you're
you
doing
coming
good
on the
work.
channel. Thank you so much. And
Yeah.
so we're going to close it up. Thank you guys for tuning into My Line of Work. I hope today's video inspired you to find the work you love. If there's a career you're curious about, drop it in the comments and we'd love to feature it. Hasta la próxima.